Okay, I'll call us back to order. The board concluded its discussion and took no action on the matters discussed. So, Board Member Roach?
I move to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
I move to approve the minutes for the June 16 through 18, 2026 regular board meeting and the July 1, 2026 special board meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move to set August 11, 2027 as the date for the August 2027 regular board meeting to occur via video conference originating from the office of the State Board of Education in Boise.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll now move into the public comment period. Do we have, Lisa, we do not have any members of the public? Okay, so we will move past that to the best part of every board meeting, and that is the update from the institution. First, I want to say again, thank you to President Wagner and the entire team from Idaho State University for hosting us again. We're thrilled to be here, and we'll call President Wagner to the front to open up.
Vice President Gilbert, members of the board, and Executive Director White, welcome to Idaho State University. For the record, I'm Robert W. Wagner, President of Idaho State University. Our institutional community is very, very happy to host the Idaho State Board of Education, and we hope you feel at home on our campus. It's an exciting time at ISU. If you haven't noticed, there's a three-digit...
President Wagner, I deeply apologize. I need to interrupt you. Apparently, we are not up on the website right now, so we're not streaming. So can we just pause for
Of course.
a moment while we catch up here? Again, I apologize. Okay. Apparently, we also have an issue with materials being available on the website. There's been a technical issue. They should be available inside 30 minutes, is what I'm being told. So we'll get this sorted out, and then we'll restart. Yeah. Okay. Okay, apparently we're back online. For the online audience, before I turn it back to President Wagner, apparently the board materials are not currently available on the website. They should be republished and available to anybody online inside the next 30 minutes. And with that, I'll again apologize, Dr. Wagner, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you. It is an exciting time at ISU. This year we are celebrating our 125th anniversary. The Academy of Idaho was created on March 11th, 1901, when Governor Frank W. Hunt signed Senate Bill 53 into law. The bill was drafted by Theodore F. Turner, considered the father of Idaho State University, who also served as an Idaho senator, a mayor of Pocatello, and had one of the most fantastic mustaches I'm aware of. Looking ever forward, Turner and all those involved 125 years ago began a tradition of community academic excellence and impact that has persevered through political turmoil, the Great Depression, the Great Recession, 2 world wars, crippling drought, 5 name changes, the Spanish flu, and the COVID-19 pandemic. We have endured. with the challenges only deepening our roots and our resolve in our communities. As Bengals, we set out all those years ago to flourish, to innovate, and to be the architects of a better day. Now in 2026, we celebrate and honor those who came before us in this effort and plant the seeds necessary to continue that legacy into the next 125 years and beyond. In 2026, we are looking forward as a public institutional resource dedicated to continuing to evolve, adapt, and change to meet the needs of the estate. In our previous 125 years and in our next 125 years, there are constants, namely the principles and values that are inherent to our public mission. We call these ISU's Contract for Idaho. This is a clear promise to the people of the state to provide empowering education, responsible stewardship, community engagement, and measurable results. And let me demonstrate. We will train Idaho's workforce. ISU prepares Idahoans for high-demand fields so Idaho business and industry can thrive in our state. ISU offers in-demand degrees that address critical workforce shortages and strategic economic impact, including health professions, business, education, engineering, and technical education, to name a few, with over 1,400 launch students and 3,300 degrees awarded in 2026. With a unique academic portfolio that spans our College of Technology certificates through associate's, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees, ISU stands ready to help keep Idahoans in Idaho with the skills and credentials they need to meet industry demands. ISU's Albion Institute is an example of how we are expanding the scope of our education portfolio and meeting workforce and community needs by also offering non-credit, workforce-aligned professional development and training in critical fields like K through 12 education. In FY26, over 7,500 students were enrolled in workforce training or continuing education through ISU and Albion's programs. We will keep college accessible and affordable. ISU will keep tuition low and ensure every Idahoan can access higher education without leaving the state. ISU's tuition is 19% lower than our designated peer institutional average, and we award over $57 million in scholarships to our students. 88% of our students come from Idaho. Financial hardship is not a reason to delay an education at ISU. Ensuring that affordability is sustainable is a major institutional goal. We are excited to launch ISU's first comprehensive fundraising campaign in over 25 years that will amplify a tradition of raising funds to make ISU even more accessible and affordable to our students. The campaign launched its silent and development phase on July 1st of this year in partnership with the ISU Foundation. I am confident the campaign will be successful, and I look forward to sharing its progress in the next few years. We will support students for success. Through academic support, mentoring, and on-ramps and off-ramps to education, we help students to be successful along their own academic pathway. In fall 2025, ISU achieved its highest retention rate in the modern history of our institution. We focused our efforts through a new all-encompassing Bengal Success Center with specialized support for first-generation and veteran students. Student retention and completion is a constant effort, and each year will bring opportunities and challenges to supporting a changing student demographic. Just last week, I was reminded of the importance of student success and how there are always opportunities to improve what we do. Last week, ISU hosted a Meridian City Chamber of Commerce breakfast event on our health science campus. At the event, I met Zach, an ISU alum who shared his amazing story. He explained that he was born and raised in Pocatello. His father died in 2002, and later his mother, along with 2 siblings, were incarcerated. He was raised by his grandma. Zach was determined, though, to earn a degree, and he attended ISU for 7 years to earn his bachelor's degree. He told me that his biggest regrets were not taking advantage of financial aid as well as student support services that we now have, like TRIO, and for our first-generation students. Zach graduated in 2020 in business and went on to an administrative position with Amazon in Treasure Valley, and recently became an insurance agent and now runs his own agency. Although I'm immensely proud of Zach and to hear his story and his persistence and the success he achieved post-graduation, his regrets remind me that we, ISU, have more work to do to ensure that all students have the support they need to be successful so that they can go on to lead productive lives and give back to Idaho and their communities. We know not all students will start at 4-year institutions like ISU. We are also making it more efficient for students to transfer from our partner institutions like CSI and CEI. With the help of a national Lumina grant to design a seamless admission transfer process. This is building on the successful completion of the Aspen Institute's College Excellence Transfer Intensive National Program. Going forward, I'm confident that even more Idaho students will benefit from one good decision as they transfer from community college to ISU. We will expand medical education in Idaho. For over a century, Idaho State University has been Idaho's health science university. That mission is part of the foundation of who we are. The state of Idaho has invested in ISU over decades to build the faculty, clinical partnerships, facilities, and statewide relationships necessary to educate Idaho's healthcare workforce. ISU is committed to helping meet Idaho's growing need for physicians and many other healthcare professionals. We are uniquely positioned with decades of experience in educating the entire healthcare team. As Idaho considers expanding medical education along with the broad portfolio of healthcare workforce capacity, we are laser focused on building upon the infrastructure, expertise, and partnerships needed to create measurable and immediate impact. Good examples of our efforts include ISU's new OB Fellowship as part of our decades-long family medicine residency program, addressing critical OB shortages, as well as the MD psychiatry track in partnership with the University of Utah Medical School, and the new PsyD program, both addressing critical mental health needs and psychiatry shortages. I'm pleased that Dr. Tracy Farnsworth, President and CEO of the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine, is with us today. I am sure he would be happy to answer any questions the board might have for him. Together, ISU and ICOM are demonstrating how collaboration can strengthen healthcare education for all Idahoans. Our partnership with ICOM demonstrates what's possible when public and private institutions work together. We are leveraging each other's strengths to educate more physicians and strengthen Idaho's healthcare ecosystem. Our partnership includes shared services, research, academic pathways, and joint degrees. Thank you, President Farnsworth, for your leadership and partnership. In reference to the healthcare ecosystem, let's not forget that physicians cannot practice without nurses, pharmacists, therapists, laboratory scientists, radiographers, physician assistants, social workers, and countless others. As Idaho's comprehensive health science university, we educate these professionals and more in dozens of other healthcare programs who work together every day to deliver high-quality care to patients and communities across Idaho. We recognize and appreciate that our sister institutions also contribute greatly to the healthcare workforce ecosystem. We applaud their great and tremendous work and appreciate that many of these programs are built on partnerships and collaborations to increase effectiveness and impact. To be clear, at ISU we combine broad and comprehensive health professions education, graduate medical education, statewide clinical partnerships, research, a dedicated health science campus, and a nationally recognized public-private partnership with a DO school under one institutional mission. Together, these assets uniquely position ISU to lead the next generation of healthcare workforce development. ISU Sam Annalene Skaggs Health Science Center in Meridian is Idaho's only campus dedicated to health professions education, clinical training, research, and medical partnerships. With room to expand on an additional 23 acres, ISU has the capacity and is looking to build infrastructure in innovative ways to grow programs as Idaho's healthcare workforce needs evolve. Our collaborative approach to healthcare education positions Idaho to increase educational opportunities, strengthen clinical training, and support additional physician education while leveraging investments already made by both the state and private partners for decades. We will strengthen rural Idaho. ISU brings education, telehealth, and outreach to rural communities so that every community benefits from Idaho's state university. ISU continues its commitment to growing access to higher education in rural Idaho, as can be seen by the increase in dual enrollment students in rural high schools thanks to ISU's Include program. We are also committed to applying our health science expertise in addressing critical needs in rural Idaho by leading the Idaho Area Health Education Centers program in partnership with our sister institutions. Another rural health solution is ISU's Institute of Rural Health, which most recently received a nearly $1 million grant to expand AmeriCorps suicide prevention programs across Idaho. We will power Idaho's energy future. As Idaho's nuclear university, ISU will drive research and workforce training for energy innovation, critical materials, and national security. Building on our decades-long partnerships with the Idaho National Laboratory and the Departments of Energy and Defense and new industry partners, ISU is positioned to provide robust next-gen nuclear workforce training, research into critical materials and industrial cybersecurity through existing and new professional credentialing as well as certificates, associates, bachelor's, and graduate degrees in fields essential to the growing energy industry. ISU's newly formed Idaho State Nuclear Academy will work with partner institutions, corporate and government partners to address workforce needs and help ensure the state of Idaho remains at the forefront of the nuclear energy resurgence. Next month, ISU will hold a formal ceremony announcing the location of our second nuclear reactor on the Pocatello campus. Yes, our second reactor. The 4-megawatt microreactor technology will enable even greater research and hands-on workforce development under a public-private partnership model that will leverage our selection as the only university in the nation to be selected for the Nuclear Energy Launchpad USA program. Be looking for an announcement of this important ceremony in the coming weeks. We will partner, not compete. Speaking of partnerships, we will continue to collaborate with community colleges, industry, and universities to make education seamless and focused on outcomes. Our willingness to collaborate is evidenced by the increasing number of partnerships, institutional agreements, degree pathways, and growing student transfers. Our partnership mentality is also evidenced by the now 15-year-old Career Path Internship program that has supported over 11,000 internships that include over 300 community and industry partners, providing students real-world and workforce skills and experience. When we all partner, the state of Idaho, communities, and industries thrive through collaboration, efficiencies, and coordination. In 2024, this board asked me specifically to address ISU's campus in Idaho Falls and our decreasing enrollments. I'm pleased to show the fruits of 2 years of strategic planning, partnership development, and deliberate efforts to grow our presence within the communities of eastern Idaho. Enrollments are growing. We are proud to be filling an important higher education role within the region alongside the incredible work being done at CEI and BYU, Idaho. We are particularly proud of this slide, which shows the increasing number of 2+2 degree pathways developed with CSI and CEI, bringing more bachelor's degrees to Magic Valley and eastern Idaho communities. I appreciate the partnership and shared vision with Presidents Barber and Fisher. Of particular note, I draw your attention to the recent launch of civil and mechanical engineering bachelor's degrees as 2+2 pathways with CSI, delivering access to much-needed energy programs to Magic Valley. We will strengthen Idaho's economy. ISU's programs align with Idaho's current and future workforce needs: healthcare, education, business, engineering, the sciences, and the trades to drive prosperity while contributing impactful research and creative arts to Idaho communities. We know that public higher education is an investment and that we must demonstrate a return on that public investment. Our efforts will always be viewed through the lens of how they benefit the economic vitality and well-being of our state and local communities. For example, in 2025, the Southeast Idaho Small Business Development Center, in association with our College of Business, provided more than 2,100 hours of consulting assistance to 188 businesses and helped clients raise over $1.7 million in capital. We will be accountable and transparent. At ISU, we know that part of showing the ROI of public investment in higher ed is to be open and accountable. We'll measure outcomes, publish results, and demonstrate Idaho taxpayers' return on investment. Transparency is just not an ambition. It will be a value we will govern by, evidenced by how our institution approached the FY26 and 27 budget holdbacks and cuts. With an unprecedented call for input and cooperation, our institution implemented a multi-pronged budget reduction strategy involving 5 focus areas: all informed by institutional community feedback, structural redesign, strengthening the academic core, operational efficiency, investing in people and performance, and revenue growth and diversification. Guided by these focus areas in an effort to address $8 million in budget holdbacks and additional millions in ongoing cuts, ISU restructured colleges and departments to reduce duplication, strengthen collaboration, and better align our academic and administrative structures with student and workforce need. We created new shared service models and identified new and innovative ways to diversify revenue, from expanding clinical and entrepreneurial activities to growing our regional campuses and creating opportunities for new philanthropic and auxiliary support. These changes were not simply about reducing cost. They were about building a more efficient, adaptable, and financially resilient institution positioned to reinvest in the mission that we have. We will lead with integrity, service, and be civically minded. At Idaho State University, we will lead by example by fostering civility, service, and community leadership in every Bengal. At ISU, we know that there are and should be multiple ways we fulfill our public service mission and responsibilities. Importantly, service to Idaho and its communities will always be our #1 priority. ISU is currently expanding learning opportunities related to civil dialogue, ensuring this is embedded in the student experience. This year, our academic new student orientation, which will be held next week, includes a targeted workshop for all participating students focusing on building productive and civil communication skills across ideological, philosophical, and cultural lines. This workshop serves as a beta test as we develop a larger initiative, a first-year experience for all ISU students that embeds civil dialogue and civic engagement, education, and training across multiple semesters as a core element of the first-year experience of every ISU student. I close with an important new initiative at ISU, the Innovation Hub. The Innovation Hub connects people, ideas, and resources to transform how work gets done at Idaho State University, turning strategic vision into coordinated, sustainable action. The 6 areas you see: innovate, accelerate, and amplify impact by aligning employee efforts with ISU's mission, strategic priorities, and commitment to institutional effectiveness. Projects currently being supported by the Innovation Hub include a unified technology roadmap, faculty and staff workplace training, and change leadership. We will continue to expand the scope of the Innovation Hub as higher education in ISU undoubtedly continues to evolve to meet the changing needs of our state and our communities. Finally, I want to say how very proud I am of this institution and all those who work hard every day to keep the contract for Idaho alive and at the forefront of our efforts. It is truly a pleasure to be here, to serve alongside so many dedicated professionals focused on our incredible students and the state of Idaho. As you know, this has been a very challenging year for ISU, all of higher ed. And I continue to be amazed and proud of the fortitude and determination of our Bengal campus community in the midst of adversity. And I thank members of this board and the board office for your support. I appreciate the opportunity to share this report, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Are there questions? David?
Turn this on. Well, thanks, President Wagner. That was a great presentation. I made a couple of notes that I'd like to ask you a few questions. But first of all, I'd say that referencing your last comment about the challenging year you've had. A couple of us met with your faculty senate this morning, and they expressed those same feelings of, like, they've been through a lot. But the message we got back, though, was how it was handled by you and the administration across the campus, and you did a great job. And I think that's widely recognized in this board, the good job you did in making the difficult and necessary decisions. I made a note that you had $57 million in scholarships, discounts, and waivers. And while that's commendable, I think you'll find that that's going to be an emphasis of this board about focusing on net tuition and transparency and what those costs are. So I'd probably put that out there for all of the presidents, that's something that's being talked about in the board.
So if I could, Board Member Turnbull, I thank you. I welcome the board's discussion and deep dive into that. We have some resetting to do at Idaho State. I've not been afraid to say that. I'm proud of the access that we're providing. I'm proud of our low tuition. But one of the reasons why we're launching a comprehensive fundraising campaign is that we need to be shifting a lot of our financial aid to philanthropic sources. And we have been relying too much on operational funds, and that's just, you'll hear me say it publicly in this meeting, that's not sustainable. We cannot do that. I cannot be a fiduciary of the state of Idaho and this institution and continue the track that we are on. We'll focus on accessibility. We need to find other ways to provide that accessibility beyond just operational funded scholarships. So I welcome the board's work.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. And then the last item I just wanted to open up was you referenced your 18% admin to instructional cost ratio. And can you give us a sense of what you see across the university systems, not just Idaho, but I think you highlighted that that's a low ratio. What's the kind of ranges that you see?
Sir, so it really depends on how it's counted. Board member, thank you. It depends on how that's counted. There are a number of ways to count that, and I will acknowledge that. Our sister institutions have referenced similar data that may or may not be aligned with the same way that we are counting. So I do know that we've all made a concerted effort based on presentations that I've seen at our sister institutions to try and lower that number as much as possible. I'm proud of the fact that with our budget reduction strategy, we have a pie chart that shows when it comes to impacted personnel and FTE, administration was actually larger than the faculty piece of the pie. And it was on par with the staff piece of the pie. So we've had a very, very concerted effort. As in any large bureaucratic institution, sometimes it's easy to grow on the administrative side. And I think it takes a very deliberate and concerted effort to control that. And what we're doing at Idaho State is actually trying to reset that. And so I think that range that you see, I can't speak for the other institutions, but I do know, again, in sitting in presentations that they made, that they're also working very hard.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I guess we're all have the same objective to get as much water to the end of the row as
That's
we
right.
can get. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent, did you have a question?
The August meeting, we all have the strategic plans on our minds. Is there an area of your strategic plan that you would highlight that is supporting the board's overall goals in our strategic plan?
Superintendent, thank you very much for that question. I think that, well, there are a number of things and ways that I can respond. First of all, continuing to make sure that our academic programs align with the needs of the state. I know it's been the effort of this board for several years to work with the institutions on things like program prioritization. That is our next step. We've been involved in that for several years, and I commend our Office of Academic Affairs and our colleges and departments for being a part of that. We need to ramp up those efforts even more. And so I believe you will see an added effort in program prioritization over the next couple years at Idaho State to make sure that we're offering the programs that our communities need. And we'll do that in a way that takes into account the impact on our people, on our students, on our community. There are a number of things that you think about. It's just not cutting programs. It's also investing in programs that need to grow too. And so I would just add, program prioritization is not cutting, just cutting. Program prioritization is investing and strategically investing. And I appreciate that that's been a focus of this board now for several years, and that's something that we'll continue to do here at Idaho State.
Thank you, President Wagner. That was a wonderful presentation, and I want to thank everyone at ISU for hosting us. This facility is just beautiful. And speaking of facilities, I'm just curious, many facilities at ISU have aged, and there's been a lot of work done, and I know there's future plans and current things. I was curious about the science building and how that's progressing, and I know that Executive VP Sagendorf is maybe presenting on this tomorrow, I'm not sure, but just wondering about this new student housing. Certain buildings, we talk about not wanting to build additional buildings, but yet there's so much deferred maintenance that needs to be done. I was just wondering if you could briefly address some of those things that are going on here.
Thank you, Board Member Roach.
Please.
This time, when the board returns to Idaho State University next year, you will see a big hole in the ground where currently the Trade and Technology building is. The Trade and Technology building will come down the end of the summer, beginning of fall 2027, and we will break ground for the new Life Science building shortly thereafter. That must be built. We received legislative support. We're still actively engaged in philanthropic efforts to help fund that, but there is no question it has to be built. It's critical to the mission of Idaho State. 2/3 of our students will go through that building itself. That building is currently, they're just finishing the architectural designs of that building, and so that is progressing, and we are on schedule with the timeline that I just outlined. At the same time next year, as those of you that are going to the reception this evening to the Stevens Performing Arts Center, as you go up the hill, that's called Bart's Drive, as you go up the hill, the first part of the grass there where the road splits, this time next year, there will be a 375-bed residence hall being built through a public-private partnership, and I know the board is considering that. I shouldn't say will be. I should say with the support of this board. That project, we anticipate and hope that project will go forward. So we are excited. Some of these projects are have-tos. We have to, and we'll find a way to do it in a financially sustainable way, in a way that has positive impact. But those are two examples of things that frankly just have to happen at this institution. You are right that there's a whole list of deferred maintenance. I will say, and we can share the numbers with you, that the influx of deferred maintenance dollars that we received from the governor's office post-COVID years, that funding, we are, I believe, one of the few institutions or agencies that has nearly expended all of those funds over a multiple year period, and we're very, very proud. You will walk down on our quad. I will admit it's a bit of a maze with fencing, but that's because we're putting those deferred maintenance dollars to work with our steam tunnels, The president's office will be kicked out of the administration building this fall and will be located in the Human Development Building here for about 3.5 months for asbestos abatement, replacing windows and HVAC. So we have worked very, very hard to use and apply all of the funds that we've been incredibly grateful for receiving from the estate. There's a lot more work, of course, that needs to be done, but we're excited with the way that we've used the funds, and it shows with the number of orange cones and chain link fencing that's around campus.
Right. We have time for probably one more question if anybody else has any additional questions. If not, thank you, Dr. White, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will move forward to what is truly the best part of the meeting, and that is I'm going to invite the students from Idaho State University to come forward. Thank you all for taking the time to join us here today, and appreciate you being with us. Would love it if we could just maybe start on one end and go to the other, and love hear your name, kind of hometown, where you're from, what's your major, and what year you are. Yeah, and please share the mics.
My name is Caleb Jex.
I don't think the mic's on.
Push
Why-
it? Okay.
And why don't you guys go ahead and just turn them all on, so that way we've got them. Thank you.
Never used one of these before. My name is Caleb Jex. I'm a senior. Okay. My name is Caleb Jex. I'm a senior studying marketing and management. Grew up right here in Pocatello, and excited to finish my last year.
Right on.
My name is Will. I am a senior in the social work program, and my hometown is Florida, but I've been here for about 5 years now.
My name is Brian Worthen-Entramil. I am from Nampa, Idaho. I am studying health science, pre-occupational therapy, and I'm a junior.
Hi, my name's Carson Jenks. I am heading my junior year here, studying management and marketing, and getting my sales certificate as well.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Dance. I'm going into my last year here at ISU. I am majoring in multi-platform journalism, and I grew up here in Pocatello.
Hello, my name is Tiana Hutchins. I'm going into my senior year in communications, focusing on public relations and graphic design, and I am from Idaho Falls.
Great. Before I open it up to the rest of the board for questions, I would love to hear, from all of you, but particularly from those not from Pocatello, but I'd like to hear from the Pocatello ones as well. It's a slightly different question. But what brought you to Idaho State University? Why Idaho State University? And then for those of you from Pocatello, kind of the same question, but hometown versus going out of town. So please, everybody, jump in. Please.
So my dad found an opportunity here in Idaho, here at Idaho State University. So while I was attending college in Salt Lake, they ended up moving here, and then I just followed shortly afterwards. And so just felt like a good option here. Good university, good tuition. So
How has the experience been?
it's been a really good experience. I really enjoy the community here at Idaho State University, and I think that's one of their strengths.
Oh, great.
I decided to go here because it was cost effective. I was health science, but I was still undecided. And so it just kind of felt far enough from home, from Nampa, but also close enough where I could visit. So location was a big thing, but also they kind of helped me guide me to where I am now, like in my major, so.
Right on. Great.
What kept me here in Pocatello at Idaho State University was, one, I wanted to stay close to family, stay close to so I could still see them. But the main thing was just the community here at ISU. Stepping on campus before becoming a student, talking with staff and faculty, it was always just warm and welcoming, and I knew that this was a place that I would fit right in if they were making me feel this special and they were wanting to take care of me. And so that was the main reason I came, was just because of this great atmosphere that I wanted to be a part of.
I would agree with Carson on that. I felt like I was more of a family, a Bengal family, rather than just a community, and I felt that when I was giving my tour on campus, and I still feel that today after being here for so many years. I wanted to stay in Pocatello mainly because of financial decision, but also because of the connection I've had with the campus, and I'm really grateful I chose to stay here at ISU.
For me, I had no idea where I wanted to go, but it was actually a college fair where I talked to advisors and stuff. It was the only college that actually seemed like they cared or actually connected with me. So that's why I chose to come here. And then I was looking at other colleges and nothing else even matched like the amount of scholarships, and it just made a lot more sense to come here, being able to actually afford it and go, versus other places I'd have to get loans, and it was a lot more intimidating to go other places. Where here I felt like I had a lot of opportunities and a lot of communication all the way from when I was interested in my junior year all the way to this day. I still have a lot of advisors and just a lot of people that are actually helping me out every step of the way.
I think for me, it was the opportunities and the people here. Growing up in Pocatello, we were kind of always on campus, going to football games, going to the bowling alley, or just things like that. You're just kind of always around ISU. You'd see it everywhere. There's logos, and you're like, okay. And then when it came time in senior year, when you're doing the tours and doing the kind of prospective student stuff, you're like, wow, the people here really care. They really love their jobs. And I was really affected by that because, if you have a community of positive people, you're going to be well taken care of, and you're going to have a positive outlook on how your education and how your future is going to look. So I think that was kind of the main selling point for me.
Great, thank you. Open it up to board members. Pete?
This is a question that I ask all of the students, regardless of the university they attend, and I have a deep interest in if you felt that and I understand you've been here a while, were you prepared as freshmen? Or was it an overwhelming, whether academic or a social experience for you, but were you prepared academically for the challenges that a university presents to you?
I would say I was. I graduated from Pocatello High School, which is right across town, and so I would say coming to college, I was pretty well prepared for what was expected and what was there. I was pretty involved in high school, and I kind of followed suit and was still very involved in college, and I think that also helps to academic success because you have more motivation to be successful. If you get all your stuff done, you can go and do the fun things, and there's more opportunities for students to be involved and have those kind of build relationships with other people that they might not have met previously.
I would also like to say I felt very prepared for going into college. I had the opportunity to come onto campus earlier in my senior year of high school and take classes on campus through dual enrollment. So I was already on campus meeting professors, seeing what it's like to be in a college campus, which really helped me go into my first day of official college, I guess, because I felt like I've already been here. I knew what it's like to go to classes in a college setting, and I felt very prepared for my experience here at ISU.
I definitely felt a little intimidated. I wasn't really sure what to expect in college, but ISU did have a program called Bengal Bridge, which I did, and it was 7 weeks. You lived on campus and took credits, and I feel like that really allowed me to meet professors, get a feel for classes, get a feel for what college was actually going to be like. And then when I started in the fall, I knew people, I knew the campus, and I feel like that definitely eased any worries that I had at all.
Any others, please?
I believe going into college, I did feel unprepared academically. I believe when I got here, though, there were a number of different resources that I know more about now that I try to tell other freshmen about. But after accessing those different resources, such as academic advising, my on-campus resource, the resident assistant, stuff like that, I was able to access college a lot easier.
Anyone else? Okay, Deb. Question.
There's been a lot of discussion at this level on some degrees perhaps only requiring 3 years for completion. And so my question to you is less about whether 3 or 4 years is the right thing for what you're studying, but the question is more about feeling that you feel like you're prepared within the areas that you're studying, that that you think there's a connection between what you're learning to the job you're actually going to do, or that when you're applying for jobs, you feel confident that you're going to be able to step into some of these roles based on the classes that you have. And if you want to comment on 3 or 4, that's okay too.
Please.
I would say now that I'm actually in the social work program, all the things that I've been learning are very helpful for when I do step into the work field. But ISU also has a lot of resources such as the Career Center if you're looking to get a resume or a mock interview or different things like that, so you are prepared to enter the field. But I would say just doing your general education, maybe not so necessarily that I felt like I was going to be prepared to enter the workforce, because you're just doing your English and your communication and your sciences. Communication obviously is a very important one if you're going to be entering the workforce, but that's just me personally, how I felt it was for me.
I would say from my experience that I do feel prepared, and because as a student in the College of Business, I've been so fortunate enough to be a part of so many incredible opportunities that are helping me outside of the classroom. My freshman year, I got to go to a competition, the International Collegiate Business Strategy Competition, where we basically ran our own business in this computer simulation. It was me and 5 other teammates. And we had the opportunity to see what it was like running a business firsthand. And so I think that gaining experience like that outside of just what we're learning in the class can really help put it all together, especially in a business setting. I do sales competitions, and so I've been able to get real-world sales experience at these different competitions and compete against students. And as a business student, we work really close with the Career Center here on campus as well, helping our resumes getting reviewed, do mock interview trainings, all of that. And so I think between all of that and our professors in the College of Business that really place an emphasis on making sure that you're prepared as a student. We have a specific class in the College of Business, and I know it was one of my favorite classes. It was personal development and professional development, I think. And it was a great class because we learned all that. We went over our resume, all of that. We learned how to behave professionally in the workplace, and so I would say that was one of the most beneficial classes that I've taken during my time here at college that I think is really going to help when I graduate.
For my communications program, because I did dual credit, I've only done 3 years, and I was a little worried it was going to be fast, but I feel like I am ready to graduate. Even if I graduated right now, I feel like I would have jobs lined up because of ISU. I got a career path internship is a program we have here where they offer us some jobs on campus, and I was able to run ISU's main social media accounts as a second-year student, looking in social media. So I felt like that I was able to get real-life experience, still in the classes and apply it either way, which is really cool. And I've also supported internships I've gotten. I have one with Idaho National Laboratory, which is in Idaho Falls, and ISU has helped me get credits through my internship. And I feel like that hopefully when I graduate, I'll have a job offer there. And so I feel like they've supported a lot of jobs that I've had in just 3 years. That I feel like I'm graduating with a full resume and lots of experience already.
One opportunity that I'm actually going to be taking this winter is applying for the Accelerated Occupational Therapy program. That means that my first year of my master's is also my senior year of my bachelor's. So that technically does shorten it by a year, and I do find that very, very beneficial, not only because it's financially the best option for me, but because it gives me an opportunity to seek more of a challenge because I am taking off a year. So I think it's a great option.
Tomorrow, as a board, we're going to have a work session regarding AI and how AI is being, how we are preparing students for an AI integrated world. And as you know, it's having a huge impact on our society, and it's ever changing and will continue to be ever changing. How, maybe you could help us a little bit in that area. Many of our institutions within the state of Idaho are increasing the number of AI degrees that they're offering and certificates, and we're going to have also a work session with INL, and you were there, you know how it's impacting business and where you're studying business. So just would really appreciate your perspective, and are we preparing students, and how do you feel about AI in the higher education setting and in the workplace?
someone's got to tame it, right? I think that's a great idea. If you can find a way to get students who, especially who are maybe going into those kind of fields like that are being largely maybe influenced by AI, to get them some kind of real world experience with AI. Because personally, I know nothing past the basics. So if I could, especially if a future job opportunity was asking about like, hey, what's your experience with that, or how much do you know? It'd be nice if I had like a certification or something that like had some base knowledge, for sure, because I can see that being the future, and so I think that'd be really helpful.
I personally think that AI is a good tool to help you learn things that you need to be able to do. But especially with occupational therapy, that's very, very hands-on. So if you have too much of it, it can be a very bad thing, in my opinion, because I think you need to learn different skills like talking to people, stuff like that, that you just cannot learn through artificial intelligence.
So I'm aware that ISU has a new AI degree coming up this next semester, and when I first heard it, I was really interested by it, and was kind of surprised, honestly, that we're embracing AI so quickly. But after thinking about it a little bit, I think embracing AI is a great way to go about it, honestly, especially from a student's perspective and seeing how students do their classwork. I think having the foundational skills is very important, but then also embracing AI to the way that we can integrate it and help us elevate our work. As a journalism major, I appreciate quality personal work that I've created myself and I've written myself, and but I can also see how utilizing AI can help our industry grow and help people be aware of problems around us, which is really important to me as a journalism major, is informing the public. And if they get their information through AI, it's how can we use that to help our students be informed in what they're learning about, or how can they use it to benefit their education.
For me, it's definitely switched off with every professor. I feel like some professors are like for it, that they want you to like learn it and use it, and some professors are like 100% like do not even like look at it, because you can use it in wrong ways. But I feel like that it's such a big thing that's very important that we do learn how to use it in our degree correctly, just because I feel like in the job fields now, it's definitely a heavy tool. In all the jobs I've looked at, they use it a lot and daily. I am excited that this fall I do have a class called Generative AI Fluency, so I'm excited to kind of learn more about it and maybe how I can apply it to my degree. But I definitely think that it's something we should be like taking, or like have the option to take classes on and kind of get ahead of, since that's taken over the job field a little bit.
Additional questions from members of the board? Thank you very much, guys. One question as you go. If you could change one thing about your experience at Idaho State, and it can be specific to your collegiate experience just generally, or specifically about Idaho State, you think would benefit students in the years to come, what would it be? It's got to be something that could be improved.
Good question.
Yeah, congratulations, President Wagner.
I can't think of anything.
Please.
I'll say one thing. It kind of already touched on, President Wagner already kind of touched on it, but I would just say the student housing. Student housing is really important just for the psychological aspect of being able to live on campus, and how those houses are as well. Obviously, they're aged a little bit, so there is that, taking that factor into account. I would say having living on campus I lived on campus for 2 years, and I really did enjoy my time, but sometimes, it being a little bit old and not really having AC or some other resources there as well would have been a little bit more helpful for my psychological aspect of things, but I really enjoyed being close to it. I really enjoyed being close to the community, having access to those resources. And so I would say if one thing can be improved, there's just the student housing itself. Student life is amazing. The community is really great. They're always putting on events, making sure that students are taken care of. And so that is one thing I will say that I can speak confidently about.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
It's for the young man from Nampa. What high school did you go to?
I went to Columbia High School.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I'm deeply interested in preparation. And if I've got something where I can go back and have conversations and say, look, this is what I'm hearing, it has more effect than just that grumpy old man's bothering us again. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming and being here today. And good luck moving forward. We'll move forward to the Idaho State University employees if they that are going to address the board, if they could come forward. And you gotta love the, you have to love the optimism and the perspective of those. But I bet if I ask the same question of you guys, I won't get the same silence in terms of. So we'll come back to that. I'd like to start with everyone introducing themselves. How long you've been at Idaho State University and what your role is at the institution, please. Hang on a second. Is that on?
Is it now?
It's good now. Now he's good. Please keep going.
Sorry. I'm in, and I'll be serving this year as chair of Faculty Senate as well.
Right on.
My name is John Armstrong. I've been here 11 years. I'm a music professor, director of jazz and commercial music.
My name is Marty Biscara. I am the past president of Staff Council. I'm also a senior project manager in facility services. I've been here just over 4 years at this point.
I'm Joe Wilcox. I've been here for 18 years. I've worked in internal audit, finance, and most recently with the health science clinics.
Hi, my name is Dr. Karen Hartman. I'm a professor in the Department of Communication, Media, and Persuasion. I've been at ISU since 2014. I also serve as our institution's faculty athletic rep.
Hello, can you hear me okay? My name is Dave.
No, hit it again.
Oh, there we go. All right. Hello, my name is Dr. Devlina Pradhan. I'm an associate professor in biological sciences and more recently starting another secondary appointment with biomedical sciences. And I am starting my 9th year as well at ISU.
Hello, my name is Tara Young. I've been here since 2002. I'm a professor of the Theater and Dance Department, and I'm recently been asked to serve as the interim executive director for the new School of the Arts.
My name is Chuck Rizzo, and I'm the executive director for Safety, Environmental, and Research Integrity. And in that role, I'm currently managing 2 groups that were distinct departments last year. That was Environmental Health and Safety and Research Integrity and Compliance. I've been with the university for 5 years.
It's going to be a stretch for you and I. My name is Darren Jernigan. I came to Idaho State 42 years ago as an athlete, and I'm currently back at ISU, as you can see. I'm a clinical professor. I'm a physical therapist and a department chair in the College of Technology, and I started my career here teaching in 2002. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Good afternoon. My name's Nicole Joseph, and I'm the Director of Admissions, and I have been with ISU for 21 years.
Excellent. Maybe I'll start. It's obviously every year it seems like is more dynamic than the year before, in terms of what is happening across our institutions, what's happening in the landscape of higher ed, and most specifically what's happening here. Obviously 25, 26 was probably the most dynamic, particularly in terms of the necessary changes that were made financially. And we as a board have commended the institution, Dr. Wagner, and the entire team for making the necessary steps that they had to make. I guess I'm curious, from your perspective, the downstream effects of that, both like sort of during the year, if it had, the impact on morale, the impact on staff, and the impact on campus. I think the impact on students, I mean, frankly, if you guys have done a great job, because that was thrown out a couple of times, and there was, they all seem to be happier than ever. That's fantastic. But I'm curious of that impact, and then what you see is the impact maybe as you move into the next couple of years, both positive and negative. And so we can go whoever wants to address that.
I will gladly jump in on this.
Thought
this
you
is,
might.
to
Yeah.
be entirely honest, I anticipated this question. I've been thinking about it for a week now. There is no doubt in my mind that the last year was pretty uncomfortable at ISU. Morale took a pretty big hit over the last year. The one thing that I will say, looking back and looking forward, is that while there have been changes, there were some pretty dynamic shifts. I actually feel like we're headed in a really good direction. We understood what was taking place. We shuffled some things around, and while operationally we're looking at things a little differently, we've actually positioned ourselves in a much better place. I think that while it's uncomfortable, change usually is, and that's where we're at the moment. We've addressed some changes. Granted, there were some individuals who were affected along the way, but overall as an institution, I feel like we are moving in a very positive direction.
Great, thank you. Others?
I think the last year obviously had a lot of unpredictability, which has fed into a number of years that have felt very unpredictable. Some of the consequences that I had in my position was some invisible labor that sometimes pops up because of that. One example was an employee who was let go, who was also enrolled in our department's master's program. And because of that, she was facing very significant financial hardship. And so faculty members, myself, someone else in our department, and another faculty member at the university served on her committee over the summer. And without pay, we did it as a service opportunity to make sure that she could finish. And so that was just one small way that no one really sees, but faculty wanted to support our students, but also people who had been let go, to make sure that they could continue on with the trajectory of their life.
Well, I'm going to echo what some of my peers here have said and say that it was a very challenging year, and I have to say I think the administration handled it very well in terms of communication. Nobody was surprised, and I was just very impressed overall that it didn't seem like the faculty and staff went as negative as you might expect in that situation. I think there was still a lot of positivity even during that challenging time.
Great. Anybody additionally?
Yeah, I just have one comment. So as an associate professor, where we had this additional department that we were going to be kind of co-appointed in, initially we had a lot of doubts and confusion as to why and what and when and all of that. And I think as things unfolded over the few months, one thing that came out is that my colleagues are very cohesive, and everyone stands for each other, and the community aspect became even more important. And then from that, what extended is that the provost's office has also been very welcoming to questions and sitting down and having multiple rounds of discussion and making sure that our voices are heard. And I felt like they really listened and heard our voices. So I really appreciate that opportunity.
Part of my job as a department chair, I manage several programs, and so I have hundreds of course evaluations, that I review. And it did percolate into the subconscious or into the conscious of the student. And it was, there was some concern about, will my program continue? Will my professors continue? Just as I heard the question as, what would the student's perspective be? These particular students didn't voice that concern, but I saw it in that particular fashion, just for your information.
Right. I'll open it up to the board for questions. Pete?
Let me put you on the spot then. The board recognizes fairly clearly the financial challenges the universities are facing. Your thoughts on why this path is the one that we're on now? What is driving that? Is it a lack of value for higher education? Or are there other aspects that are driving decisions that affect state-generated funding?
I wouldn't pretend to know all the details of what goes into some of these decisions, but I will say that clearly, if you read the news, higher ed's going through a pretty significant restructuring in this country in terms of not only funding from the top, but also suspicion from the bottom. If you look at every single poll from teenagers, there's a recent Gallup poll about Gen Z and specifically like 13 to 16-year-olds saying what do they think the value of a college education is. That has been dropping for a long time. So I think that there are just a myriad of factors that in 20 years we'll look back at this segment and not just, it's not an Idaho story. This is a United States story about what the purpose is of the university. And if I may, I think one of the key things that I think President Wagner and this administration has done so well is to meet that question head on as opposed to hide from it like a dragon that you dream about or something. We're turning around and looking at it. And one of the big things is to get involved in the community and think of the university as an enrichment and something that can actually integrate within the community, not just enrolled students, which I actually think benefits the enrolled students. It gives them more of a plethora of opportunities as opposed to just skills that you learn in a classroom. In fact, I wrote down a quote from one of the students, a communications major. I didn't catch her name, and she said she graduated with a full resume, or she's going to graduate with a full resume. And that caught my ear. I thought that was a really interesting way to put it. If we can give them opportunities, project-based learning, different multifaceted, multidisciplinary collaborative projects here, that's something that will carry forward. And if universities start to collaborate and we get a little bit more fluid, a little bit more dynamic ourselves with this kind of cross-departmental collaboration, I think that's the kind of thing that's going to generate more value in not only the eyes of the State Board of Education, but also, no offense, more importantly, 13-year-olds.
The none taken, absolutely more important. I think we would echo that. Please.
So yeah, I had a chance to talk to Board Member Turnbull and Board Member Sidaway this morning, and one of the things we talked about was the challenge of the reputation of academia among the public and among the legislature. I talked about how my experience as a faculty member is that often the way that academia is portrayed in the media doesn't match my experience, and I'm sure academics are responsible for that fact. I think part of it also, as we talked about this morning, has to do with the fact that the conversation is often national and focuses heavily on elite universities like Harvard and Columbia. I just read an Atlantic article that's making a big splash about a tenured member of the faculty at Bates who left for, it's an article by, I forget his name. But in any case, if you read that article, Bates is nothing like, it's very different than ISU. They're totally different places. And the problems that are faced there are totally different than the problems at ISU. And so I think one of the things we somehow need to find a way to do is to more accurately communicate to people in Idaho what we do and who we are, because I think there are just real misunderstandings there.
That's well said. Others?
I think it's a real opportunity right now for looking back at this restructure that we've went through. Change has been hard for a lot of people involved, a lot of community asking, hey, what's happening over there? What's going on? Is this place going away? You know, and I think about the restructure, and one of the coined phrases of our upper administration and the president saying we need to look at this as doing things differently, you know, and so being able to have a collaborative art form is something that I'm very passionate and connected to. And so if you think about education and collaborating with other entities so you're not in so many silos, I think is a real opportunity to move forward. And I think that students, looking particularly at that teenage student, I have two of them, they really thrive on being collaborative with their peers that enjoy other disciplines. To work together on projects of any kind, I think can be invaluable for future generations.
Kind of going off of that, something that I wanted to talk about is that I do a lot of research, I do research in biology, and having a current grant from the National Science Foundation, a big facet of that is, you know, workforce development, as well as training this, you know, new generation to be doing the things that we are passionate about. And one of the ways that I have been doing it in my lab is actually involving my students to do community education, going out there, teaching, going to different science events, also hosting high school students in my lab. And so I've now finished 3 years of hosting 6 high school students in total, and they presented at the Idaho Conference for Undergraduate Research every year. And, you know, our VP for research went to their posters and talked to them. And I think it is there in those, you know, kind of getting the barrier of science down and making it more accessible. I think that is really important right now. And I'm not sure how I'm going to continue doing it in future because my grant will end, but that is kind of, you know, those are some of the things that I think involving the new generation to also partake in showing how excited they are to be here, them going to conferences and sharing that, you know, sharing the pride in something they discovered, I think is really important. So I think that's what I'm trying to continue.
David?
Thanks, Bill. Whenever I get a chance to go to the different universities, I always take the opportunity to meet with the faculty senate to hear your concerns and hear what's going on at campus. And so I know that this past year's been a difficult one for the whole campus. Talking to your representatives here makes me appreciate that even more. I just want to commend you for the attitude with which you've approached those difficult circumstances. Sometimes when you go to work and, you know, you're feeling those pressures, or you feel like the larger populace doesn't appreciate what you do, that can be a big burden. So I just wanted to let you know that we appreciate what you do and we hear you. I wanted to pivot off of Pete's question to the students, and I think that the students are probably not necessarily a representative. There's probably we often get the cream of the crop that come and present to us. But my question, particularly to some of you that have been around the longest, is how do you view the preparation of the incoming students compared to several years ago, both academically, socially, and so forth?
Well, I can start with that. I haven't been here for that long, but I was teaching first year biology for the first time last year, and I surveyed the room, and out of my 100 students, they were all basically in 8th grade during the pandemic, which is not that long ago. And so there are certain things that we have to be more prepared in terms of knowing how those students who were there during the pandemic at home, rather than being outside in collaborative environments, I think that is something to keep in mind as educators. And also, another thing just in general, I teach A&P, and so a lot of students who come in with having so many credits completed in high school, I mean, it's great, but then when they come straight to a third-year level course, it's really hard. And we don't really understand, we don't get to know that. It's until I'm meeting students one-on-one, or something that came out of an assignment they did that stood out, and I invited them to meet with me, and then they said, yeah, like I haven't done any other courses on campus. This is, or in higher biology, and this is my first time doing. And so that's where, coming and looking at a cadaver lab, like that is, that is an amazing experience that we have here. And which ISU is one of the few places to offer that. But that is a lot for somebody who's, 18 years old to not be prepared beforehand. And so I think dual credit is good. But yeah, just a little bit more awareness for us as faculty teaching those harder science courses.
Well, I'm about 50 years older than that. I don't think I'm prepared for a cadaver lab either.
In my role, I don't directly work usually with the students, but I work with the faculty a lot who work with those students, and they approach me with requesting additional resources a lot. And what they tell me is that the students don't have their critical thinking skills, and being able to apply what they have learned is severely lacking from what it used to be. And that then they're asking me for resources so that they can provide additional teaching and spend additional time with the students. And multiple departments and programs have expressed this to me.
So I had the honor to be a co-chair of the President's AI Task Force, and one of the things that we heard, one of the concerns from faculty was the effect of artificial intelligence and the use of AI in the classroom affecting the critical thinking of some of the students, and there was a lot of concern that could have a negative effect.
I had a short stint as an adjunct instructor for the computer-aided design drafting program, and we had some dual enrolled students in that as well that had come from Century High School. I had an interesting mix of prepared and not prepared. The motivation levels are kind of all over the place. I will say that the students that had come from high school dual enrolled were significantly more motivated than individuals who had already been in the program for a semester. It was kind of night and day, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but there was a motivation there. Overall, I mean, all of our students by the end of the semester, everybody was passing, everybody was doing great, but there was definitely a drive that I noticed in the high school students that maybe wasn't as noticeable in the first year college students.
That's an interesting perspective. Thanks.
Then to follow on with that, there is a movement within a number of the school districts throughout the state, and same with the charter schools, frankly, to ban cell phones out of the classroom. So is that something that the state needs to continue to examine?
Well, one of the conclusions that we came to as a task force is maybe that we need to give the faculty the tools to be a little bit resistant to people using AI and just spitting something back at them. You know, there are ways to teach, having people give presentations or maybe some hands-on type of activities that could help to avoid, students' academic integrity temptations.
I can't necessarily speak to K through 12 and telephones or cell phones, right? Mobile use in AI, but I know in our department, we're in communication, and we run the whole entire spectrum of, in our lower level, COM 1101, oral communication class, there is no AI use. In my media writing class, there is no AI use. But I also teach public relations classes, and I know that our students cannot go into the public relations field without knowledge of how to use AI, what it is, and that they will be in interviews where they will be asked how they incorporate it into their work. And so that's in our upper division classes. Not only do we offer classes in AI, but we're working with how do we incorporate it from kind of a media literacy perspective, to not ban it and say don't use it all the time, but how do we understand it and incorporate it into our personal and professional lives so we can be better at what we do.
Bill? Yeah, please. Then if I could follow on with that. Does lack of access to it increase academic rigor within a younger child, or does it hinder academic rigor within a younger child? A bias of mine is that I don't think we have enough academic rigor in the high school levels, and that's something that we need to continue to focus on, understanding that they need to have the mastery of the technology as it exists. But the academic rigor is something I worry about greatly. You talk the sciences, I'm deeply worried about mathematics, that we're not there yet. And so that's part of where the thought process that at least I have is that we push children. And for me, it goes everything from the measurement of is the SAT and the ACT more valuable than, say, taking the ISAT as a measure of where a child is. It's just a part that's within my mind deeply. So, please.
I've spent a fair amount of time in the classroom, about 20 plus years, deeply involved in student learning as a faculty member and as a program coordinator of a program that has a national licensure examination that students have to undergo to practice. And if I go back to the very beginning of my career, the one thing that I think we're kind of poking around on a little bit is the resilience of the student. I was much younger then too. I actually had hair back then. It's apparently different. You know, obviously I've aged some, but when I track the resilience of the student through time, they're apparently, and this is my opinion, fairly more fragile than the cohorts in the beginning of my career. And so I think there's something to be said about that, and I think partly it's just the penetration of the digital age, things like AI. AI is really tricky, you know, especially when you try to use it in a fashion to teach students to learn, like to create quizzes for themselves so they can study better. But what we found is it becomes a pretty quick crutch to do things for you right now and avoid the meat and potatoes of actually getting in there and learning things. I'm not sure that they're less prepared. I have a feeling that they are, but they're just not as apparently resilient to take their lumps a bit and learn. And that's the part that I see as a 25-year, you know, teacher, instructor, professor here at ISU. And it troubles me too. You know, we have gone to lengths to try to shore up different approaches, different techniques to foster students to be successful. And we've been lucky, but we have had some difficulties with performance on some of these national examinations. And so I'm going to say my programs are no different than the others. I'm sure that there have been others that have had difficulties as well. But I thought I would just give you my insights as an educator.
I would say another thing that I've seen in the 23 years I've been here at ISU as a professor is the mental health of the student. It has changed, I think, dramatically. I'm not sure all of the different components that are put into that bag. I do know that if I look at theater-specific students, they do have rigor in the classroom, partly because we're designed to produce. We have deadlines consistently for those productions. I've got a couple of students right over there working this event. They're doing great. But I think that in general, the student that I saw 20 years ago, they face so many different challenges now that we didn't have, some of which is this new AI. Oh, we're competing with this thing that can spit out a paper in 30 seconds, and it took me 3 weeks to write that, and it wasn't perfect. So there's this, oh, I must be perfect, right? And I think there's all these pressures socially that hit them, and I think, you know, if I were to look to someone that maybe studies psychology, I think they would have a little more in-depth of a thought here, but I think in general, the mental health is a big component to that rigor, and for them thinking that they might not be good enough. And the reality is that everyone deserves to learn and have an opportunity to seek higher education. And so I think, you know, if we can, as a state, just embrace and nurture that even further to tell them that they do deserve to come and they do deserve to study and go on. I think that's another aspect that we can continue to work on from our point of view.
Great. Do you have Cindy? Yeah, I got time for maybe one more, Cindy.
This is for Nicole. I'm not going to let you get off that easy. So 21 years, correct, that you've been here. So tell me some of the trends that you've seen, and is this the best of times or the worst of times?
This is the middle of times. How about that? I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best or the worst right now, but I also think that we're looking to always grow, right? And so maybe during times that we thought were the worst of times, we were growing through those and becoming better. And if you're asking me specifically about students and coming to ISU, I think our student, specifically to ISU, has changed, right? Over time, obviously. We were more of a non-traditional student population for a long time, and we're seeing more and more of a traditional student population now. And what those students need is different than what our non-traditional students needed, 10 years ago. So, and what those students are looking for. And I do think this past year has been more challenging as far as getting students to see the value of higher education overall, and I don't think that's just specific to ISU. I think all the institutions in Idaho are feeling that, and getting this class to think about going on or really even doing anything, right? Whether it's some sort of post-secondary training all the way to, seeking out a university education. So I would say we're in the middle of times. How about that? Yeah.
Well, we could keep going for a long time, but unfortunately, I think we need to wrap it up there. But I want to thank you all for being candid, for coming today, and I also thank you for doing what you do, and for our students. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Yes, certainly we get the best and the brightest in front of us, but the reality is just look at the answers that they gave. Like, you picked up a couple of things out of the way they said stuff that gives us a lot of hope, and that's frankly because of all of you. And we know, I think it was really well said, that what our institutions are doing, and specifically in this case Idaho State University, is very different than what you read about and what you see across the country. And we as a board are incredibly proud of that. We try to talk about that all the time. And you're right, we need to do a better job, but thank you for what you do. We'll take a quick break. Let's come back forward in about, I'd like to stay on, so let's come back in about 5 minutes if we would, 2:40.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I didn't want to take away from the great answers, but I think what's been described provides the evidence as to what our board did in conjunction with the legislature as it's going into place in our schools. We've updated the senior project to a future readiness project to take in the very things that have been explained here so that our students are more prepared as they go on to the next thing. I just had to add that as a note.
Perfect. Good.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back in 5.
You know, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
It's like a puzzle, so one piece has to go first.
It comes from the iPhone and social media. Anxiety, fragility. Well, no. And then to Karen's point on AI, because AI is a totally separate thing from social media and stuff like that. Bill and I will tell you, we're not hiring you unless you have critical thinking skills and AI skills.
And if you apply those things,
No, you can if you. The trouble is, you're right. It is suggestive, but not definitive. But then if you have a follow-up conversation, do they know what they're talking about? Do they know what this paper says, or do they not? But it takes a lot. Bill and I could. Skills and AI skills. In any significant role, you've got to have both. That's a good point.
I appreciate it.
I'm not sure how I was invited to be the director of something, so. It's good experience for me and also I think we, yeah, well, I mean, it's a big deal. A different institution.
Some kind of reckoning. Crazy stuff that's going on.
Thank you.
I was on Lemonade Ice.
Well, there you go. Okay, that's not complicated.
Yeah.
I'm using them.
I wanted to ask both of you if English is one-on-one
We have 1 minute. One minute.
What a taskmaster.
Let's turn that on. Oh, we don't have Cindy and Debbie. Sean should be back on. Yep.
I am.
Okay, Superintendent, we'll ask you to. Can't be the kid in the back of the class. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I apologize for moving us along, but if you look, we've got a fairly extensive agenda in front of us. I'd like to invite Dr. Barber and then I believe Dr. Barber, you've got a special guest with us today that we all love and appreciate, Park Price, to join you up here at the table for the update on the College of Eastern Idaho. So welcome to both of you.
Park is such a great guy.
And you might not get the hard questions, Dr. Barber. It'll be Park we'll go at just for.
Chair
thank
Price
you.
already said, am I going to have hard questions? And I said all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
All of them will be directed towards him.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Chair Gilbert, members of the board, thank you so much for this opportunity to present today, and a special thanks for allowing Chair Price to be here as well today. What an honor to be able to present with somebody who is so well respected and loved, not only in Idaho Falls, but really across the whole state of Idaho and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Price for his remarks.
Thanks, Lori. That's quite a introduction, and Chairman Gilbert, thank you for your comments as well. So Chairman Gilbert and the members of the State Board and colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Park Price, Chair of the College of Eastern Idaho Board of Trustees, and I appreciate your continued interest in CEI. We're especially thankful that over 10 years ago, you encouraged our steering committee to pursue a campaign to transform Eastern Idaho Technical College into the College of Eastern Idaho. That transformation happened 9 years ago. Since inception, the trustees and college leadership have been united around one purpose: student success. Much like you, our role as trustees is to govern well and to support the president in advancing the mission of the college. President Amon brought this college to life and recruited a strong leadership team. President Barber, a member of President Amon's cabinet, built on that solid foundation with energy and a continuing commitment to the students and communities CEI serves. The trustees and our president understand our respective roles, and we are moving together forward. As you will hear from President Barber, CEI is the fastest growing higher education institution in the state. We have tremendous momentum, and with the opening of Future Tech tomorrow, we will have the opportunity to serve an additional 1,000 students. That's an exciting moment for our college and for Eastern Idaho. It also highlights the need to grow in a way that is financially sustainable and true to the quality education our students deserve. We're optimistic about the path forward because the trustees and college leadership have a history of solving challenges like this. In short, CEI's governance and leadership are speaking with one voice. We are grateful for the State Board's partnership, proud of CEI's progress and enthusiastic about what comes next for our students, employees, and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Price. He's taken all the highlights, but now I will fill in the blanks. And I have to say that CEI is extraordinarily fortunate to have such an incredible board that is behind us with all of the decisions we make and supporting us at every step of the way. So you'll see the first slide is College of Eastern Idaho, if we can go back. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, creating educational impact. And, you know, at CEI, since our inception in 2017, we've really thought about how we can do education differently in a way that better serves our students, our community, and the entire state. And we feel like that we have done just that, and we will continue to create educational impact. So our mission has a lot of words to it, but I thought I would just highlight the parts of the mission that we focus on every single day, and that is to provide affordable, quality education so we have workforce-ready students and we're making a community impact in our region and beyond. If we can go to the next one. But what we really focus on, as Chair Price said, every single day is our students. That is, everybody who comes to work every day thinks, how can we better serve our students? What do our students need? And how can we connect them to their goals more readily so when they leave us, they are ready for the workforce or they are ready to transfer on to their next goal. So CEI at a glance, we serve 9 counties, and that's a huge area that we serve. We serve from Arco to Salmon, from Blackfoot, all over the eastern region of the state. But we make sure that each of those counties gets something from us if it's something that they need. We have 2 Idaho Falls campuses. We have our main campus that many of you will be on tomorrow, hopefully, as we cut the ribbon on our brand new building. And then we have our workforce development campus where we have 2 more buildings. We have many learn and earn opportunities, and we work with over 50 employers and have partnerships with them, again, to make sure that when our students graduate, they are ready on day 1 to enter into the workforce, or they are ready to transfer on as true juniors. We can go to the next one. So I really want to highlight that we have 20 programs that we have worked with the community on to ensure that we are creating the right programs, the right certificates so that our students are ready to go to work. We have 40 different credentials. We have everything from that first certificate to bachelor's degree. CEI is the only community college in the state to offer 2 bachelor's degrees. We will be launching one this fall. That is our digital forensics analytics. We were hoping to have 8 enrollees for a first program. I just checked with our provost, and we have 24 enrollees in that bachelor's program. So we are thrilled to be able to offer that to the community. If we could go to the next slide. Something that CEI is very, very proud of is that we have a lot of different pathways into our institution. So CEI serves a wide variety of constituents who come through our doors: high school graduates, veterans, transfer students, people who are upskilling, people who want to change their careers. And we want to have one door for them when they come in and have 2 pathways. And that can be for credit or for non-credit. And then we have a bridge between the 2. So if a student comes to us in workforce training and they get an industry recognized certification, but then they decide that they want to move on into a credit program, those things that they have learned in workforce training, we have a mechanism by which they can take that to credit for prior learning. Conversely, if a student comes to us through the credit side of the house, but they need to leave us earlier than they had expected, then we have a way for them to get a credential through workforce training so they can leave better than when they entered our institution. So we are very proud of the fact that we have all of those different pathways or highways into our institution. Thank you. So again, we know that today everything is moving faster in higher education. People are changing careers multiple times. And we also know that skills don't last as long. And education is no longer a one-time experience. It's something that people are going to need to return to again and again and again. And what I talk about a lot on our campus or out in the community is that what we want to make sure is that our learners have the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to be successful for whatever is next once they leave our institution. And that's where it becomes really real for us here in Eastern Idaho. Local employers are looking for skilled workers right now. Adults are coming back to school while they're having to work full time. Students are balancing jobs, family, and education. And what I'm very proud about is that every day CEI meets those students where they're at. We ask them, what is your goal? Where do you want to be next? And we connect them to that goal and get them to that what's next in the quickest amount of time with the least amount of money. Something that CEI is very much focusing on, you heard President Wagner talk about this earlier, is the nuclear resurgence. How many of you guys have heard about the nuclear resurgence? Some of us have been hearing about the nuclear resurgence for about 3 decades. But what is really exciting about this is the nuclear resurgence is here and it is happening now. There is a global demand and we have many, many local opportunities. We have the advanced reactors, the small modular reactors, there's energy innovation, and what they're going to need is a skilled workforce. And CEI is working diligently to be able to provide that skilled workforce for all of that nuclear work that is coming to Eastern Idaho. So what is next then for CEI? Well, the vision for CEI is that we would be offering in the space of the certificates, the 2-year degrees, the technician training, that we would be what I have been calling the center of the nuclear education universe because with everything that is coming to our side of the state. Many of you might have heard that we were awarded a Tech Hub grant that is through the Intermountain West Nuclear Energy Corridor Tech Hub. CEI had a share of that at just about $2 million. $700,000 of that is for our STEM Institute that I'll talk about in just a little bit. And then about just a little over $1 million of that is for us to build out workforce training in the nuclear space. If we could go to the next one. So in all of this, while we're doing all of this, we're building new programs, building new certificates, working with industry partners. CEI has been growing. We have been growing perhaps like no other college in Idaho and maybe no other college across the United States. So in our early college program in 2017, we had 0 students. In FY26, we had 2,830 early college students. That is an extraordinary amount of growth. And while that is an opportunity, it has also been somewhat of a challenge to manage all that growth. Fortunately, the faculty and staff at CEI are prepared every single day for the deluge of students that are coming our way, and we are very grateful that they continue to come with us, to us. I want to stop on this slide for just a minute. I want us to really look at this slide. In 2018, CEI had just over 1,000 students. We just calculated our FY26 numbers, and we have just shy of 5,000 students. So in 9 years, we have grown by about 4,000 students on the same size campus that we've always had. CEI has not built a new building since 2007. That's why we are so excited tomorrow. You're probably going to hear me say this many more times before the presentation is done. That's why we're so excited tomorrow to cut the ribbon on the Battelle Energy Alliance Future Tech building in partnership with Frontier Credit Union. Now, Chair Price, usually when he talks about that building, says that might be the longest name of any building in history in the state of Idaho. But we are very proud of the partners who came to the table to be able to fund that building and for us to be able to open it this fall to welcome more students onto our campus. So along with our credit students, we're keeping a laser-sharp focus on workforce training. That's that non-credit side of the house. So in FY26, we trained 11,126 learners through community education, cyber computing, contract training, healthcare, and community education and summer camps. And that was working with over 72 employers who came to us and said, we have a need, and we said, we will meet that need for you. So workforce training, non-credit training, making sure, again, that our region has the skilled employees they need remains a huge focus, along with training all of those credit students. While we're focusing on STEM education, technical mastery, nuclear education, we are ensuring that we are keeping that within the human context. At CEI, we want to make sure that we are educating the whole student. And the way you do that is by keeping focus on those general education courses, on the humanities, and on the social sciences. We know that it is the board's priority to ensure that our students are graduating with durable skills. They are essential skills. Those are the skills of critical thinking, of empathy, of collaboration, of communication. And so we are ensuring that we are not losing sight of training that whole student. And it is something that we're very, very proud of at CEI. Something else that is going on at CEI is that you've heard some of the faculty and staff from Idaho State University say that students are coming to us with more challenges. They're coming to us perhaps not as resilient as they were 10 years ago. They just have different challenges than students in the past have had. And so we are keeping a big focus on the student support systems at CEI. We know that you can't just put a student in a classroom and then expect them to succeed. They've got to have all the wraparound supports that go with that. So our career readiness, our college and career readiness division has just exploded. That is the division where adult basic education happens, and that continues to grow. Students come to us perhaps not speaking English, perhaps not being able to do basic math, and we take them, we put them in that program, and then help them move on to whatever is next. Our tutoring and academic support has increased by 10% just over the last year. And we will tutor anybody that comes on our campus. That's not just for CEI students, that's for anybody in our community. And we're also taking that those tutoring activities to the high schools. We're serving many high schools with our tutoring center and taking that tutoring to them rather than saying, come onto our campus. Our testing center continues to grow astronomically as well. And during FY26, the testing center had a remarkable 37% increase. We administered over 30,000 exams while continuing to offer and focus on making sure the student gets the best support that they can when they come to our testing center. We invest in student success, and when we invest in student success, we invest in the future of our region. And I would also like to point out that since FY23, we've had a 690% increase in our GED graduations, and this past year we had 87 graduations in GED. At CEI, we are educating the student that stays in Idaho. We know that a big focus of the governors and of the legislature is how do we keep more of our students right here in Idaho once they're trained. So 90% of CEI graduates stay and work in Idaho. We are very proud of that, and we work on that every day to ensure that those students have what they need to be able to stay and work in our region. We can move on. So how do we keep focused with all of this growth that is going on? I'm proud to say that CEI rolled out a brand new strategic plan in February of 26 with 6 strategies. I realize there are only 5 strategies up there, and I can count. The 6th strategy is student achievement. Everything we do points to student achievement. So the first strategy is sustainability. CEI has to figure out in a time of budgets that are being cut and all of that growth that you're seeing, how are we being sustainable? So that's something that we talk about a lot on our campus. We want to be very responsive to workforce. So we're trying to figure out, we're always asking, are we offering the right programs in our workforce training, and how can we increase the workforce training by serving our industry partners better? You saw all of that growth in early college, so we want to make sure that all of those students who are taking early college matriculate to CEI before they either go to work or they transfer on to a university. We're also we've had a lot of discussion already today about digital and AI literacy. CEI is leading the way in digital and AI literacy, as making it one of our 6 strategies for the next 4 years. One of the things we're doing is English 101 is the course that we have heard where our instructors were perhaps the most concerned about what is this going to do to our classes and how are we going to continue to teach in a world of AI. And so we got together with a vice president, a dean, and the faculty members in English 101, and we said, how can we redesign the course while still meeting all of the outcomes where it is AI forward instead of saying no AI use in this class at all? And so the faculty spent the spring of 26 redesigning the English 101 courses. We piloted it in summer of 26, and then this fall we will be rolling it out across all of our English 101 courses. And we feel like we are one of the first to do this in the English 101 courses, where students will learn how to use it responsibly to write, because here's what we know when we talk to our students, when we talk to people across our campus, students are going to use it anyway. And so how do we teach them to use it responsibly and better? And then finally, our 5th strategy is STEM achievement. How can CEI become a destination for learners who are wanting to go into STEM, and how can we ensure that they are getting that high-quality STEM education before they either move into the workforce or they transfer on to a university? Something else that we undertook this past year is zero-based budgeting. Now, when we first rolled this out, people said, you can't do zero-based budgeting in higher education. And luckily, we have an incredible CFO. She and I worked very closely together to say, absolutely, we can. So every department, instead of just getting what they got last year plus 2 or 3%, we said you're going to have to build your budget from the ground up. Now, that was a ton of work in an already challenging year, but here's what it's done for CEI. Now at CEI, we know where every penny is being spent. We know where every penny is being invested. We know where that money needs to go and where we can pull back and save a little bit. And so what we know now is that we can justify every dollar spent. We know we are making data-driven decisions. We know they are aligned to the student outcomes. And we know that there is no excess and we are fully optimizing our budget. If you could go to the next one. Some other statistics that CEI is very proud of. So our overall CTE placement rate is 96%. That means almost every student who comes to CEI, they are getting a job when they graduate from CEI. That's an extraordinary placement rate. Our NCLEX pass rate for our LPNs, it's 100% on the first time they take the test, and we've had that statistic for over 7 years. Our RN NCLEX pass rate is 92%, and when they take it a second time, those 8% that don't pass the first time, they pass the second time. So we have 100% of a time pass rate if they have to take it twice. CEI, you'll hear more about this tomorrow. We will be opening the Battelle Energy Alliance Applied STEM Institute. The mission of that STEM Institute is building STEM talent for tomorrow's workforce. BEA was very generous with us and gave us a $1.5 million grant in order to start and infuse that STEM Institute. They gave us one mission, which was to infuse the STEM pipeline. We know that we have all of these amazing jobs coming right here to Idaho and certainly to East Idaho. We want to make sure that Idahoans are getting those jobs. And the way we do that, we can't wait till they come to us in post-secondary education. We have to start reaching down into the high school and middle school, junior highs, to get them excited about STEM. And that is exactly what this STEM Institute will do. So we're doing a lot of things internally that we know we're doing right, but we're also getting a lot of external validation. The Carnegie 2025 Student Access and Earnings Classifications in Idaho ranked CEI #1 in high access, high earning potential of our students who come to us. We were the only public institution in Idaho to receive this high honor. And what that means is, as I've already said, any student who walks in our door, we say, what is your goal? What is it you want to do? We connect them to that goal. We keep them going in CEI. And when they leave CEI, they have the opportunity to get a job that has high earnings. This is something that we are very, very proud of. And we're really raising the bar across the institution. I've already talked a little bit about the AI Literacy Initiative. CEI just received their NACEP accreditation. That is the gold standard accreditation for early college. There are only about 136 institutions across the nation that have that accreditation. CEI is one of them. CEI had their largest graduating class this year with 514 graduates. That keeps going up every year. We just had a successful mid-cycle accreditation visit, and we received our NSA cybersecurity validation that is valid through 2031, which says that we are offering the right outcomes for our cybersecurity degrees that the NSA would like to see in programs. We are very, very proud of that. We are also very excited about the future. Our enrollment for fall is tracking at almost 8% increase over last fall, which was up 10%, which was up over 14% the last fall. CEI is experiencing almost exponential growth. And while that is a challenge, CEI continues to meet that challenge year after year. We are expanding programs. This fall, we will be opening a dental hygiene program. We'll be launching the Digital Forensics Analytics bachelor's degree that I spoke of earlier. Next year, we will be launching an agribusiness degree and launching our operations management bachelor's degree. And then, as you've all heard so much news about, tomorrow we will be opening and cutting the ribbon on the Battelle Energy Alliance Future Tech Building in partnership with Frontier Credit Union. We are proud to say that the governor will be there and also Senator Risch, along with many other dignitaries, and hopefully many of you will be there as well if the board meeting wraps up in time. And we are looking forward to welcoming you to our campus. So our approach at CEI is optimistic, we have a lot of camaraderie, and we're very intentional. Those aren't just our words, those are the words from our mid-cycle evaluators who came from the Northwest Commission. And when they left, they said, we don't know that we have ever seen such an optimistic campus who works so well together and have such intentionality in everything that they do every single day. So at CEI, we really do feel like we are meeting the needs of industry, we are meeting the needs of our students, we are meeting the needs of our community, and we are very much trying to redefine what comes next instead of doing education just in the way it's always been done. In closing, I will say I am very, very proud of our faculty and staff, of everything they do every day in very challenging circumstances. Our faculty and staff at CEI, they're there on purpose. Many times, I think community colleges have a reputation that perhaps students, faculty, staff, they come to us when nothing else works out. At CEI, I can tell you nothing could be further from the truth. Our faculty are there on purpose. They are excited about our mission. They are excited about being able to build a college, and they really are excited about helping to redefine what comes next. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about College of Eastern Idaho today, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. We have time for maybe one or two questions, but anybody have questions for either part?
Quick one, thank you. Recognizing that there's been some reframing with IDLA classes and where students are able to access dual credit and advanced opportunities, have you seen an uptick or do you expect to see that this coming fall?
An uptick in enrollees for
dual credit?
Yeah. So we do, and we have been working very closely with IDLA on how we can help continue to meet their needs while students' needs are being met as well. Yes.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Additional questions?
I have a quick question. Thank you for being here, Mr. Price. It's such a pleasure. And I was curious, have you thought about starting, I know you're doing many things, starting a foundation?
So
do you have one?
Yes, so Board Member Roach, thank you so much for the question. And yes, CEI does have a foundation. The foundation under ITech was largely focused on scholarships, and while our foundation is still focused on scholarships, we are beginning to transition that to more of an advancement office as well. So we're very excited to see those changes coming to help just with the revenue streams at College of Eastern Idaho.
Great. Additional questions? Well, congratulations on the incredible momentum and the work that you've done. I know a lot has happened in a relatively very short period of time, and it makes a massive difference for the eastern part of our state, but for the state in general. So thank you. Appreciate the time today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Bill, just comment.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
As a kid that grew up and born and raised in Idaho Falls, I saw the humble beginnings of what's now CEI, and I'd say you're just getting started.
That's how we feel every day is the future is bright and there's much work to be done.
And Mr. Price himself is an institution in the state.
Very lucky to have him serve as the inaugural chair for so many years. Thank you.
Well, we'll move forward to our work session. I'll turn it over to Board Member Roach.
Yes, I'm excited about this work session today, and I think the board members will really enjoy this. And Heidi Estrom, our Chief Academic Officer, kind of worked together with Hope Morrow. Thank you for being here, Hope, from INL. She's the Manager of Workforce and Economic Programs. This work session is a follow-up to the December 2025 information item on nuclear industry post-secondary education partnerships. Todd Combs, the Deputy Lab Director and Chief Research Officer from INL, I believe, is on hand if there are any questions or...
I know he was touring around some international visitors and had an intention of being here, so if he's not here yet, he may join us. But we have, if you have not seen in the news recently, a lot of people visiting us at the moment.
Yes,
So,
yes.
but if I can't answer those questions, I'll be sure to make sure that Dr. Combs gets them answered, and we'll get them back to you.
Thank you. I would just like everyone knows INL is one of the most important employers in the state of Idaho, and Idaho is so fortunate to have you headquartered here and appreciate everything you do, especially with regard to education in the state of Idaho. So I'll turn it over to both of you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, sometimes the magic mouse moves and sometimes we move it. Okay, thank you for that introduction. I'm very honored to be here with you all today and to talk a little bit about the nuclear mission behind Idaho National Laboratory, what that could look like for the future of Idaho's workforce. Some of you have seen some of this presentation before. I'm excited to share it with all of you today and talk a little bit about kind of how we see this vision playing out, a little bit of forecasting of what those types of jobs and those counts and stuff are. But we're going to start with the beginning here, where we're going to talk about the reason that we're all here, outside of the fact that there is a massive energy demand across the globe and that continues to grow. We feel it vehemently here in the Intermountain West and across the United States of America. The use of nuclear power for clean generation of electricity has been used for well over 5 decades. What you see in that top right corner is the technology that we utilize every single day that powers almost 20% of the entire American grid. That is a legacy size light water reactor. We're talking about hundreds of megawatts to a gigawatt worth of power in each one of those big cylinders. What's tough about those is they're very expensive and they put off a lot of power and they take a lot to build them. So in the last 75 years, the researchers at Idaho National Laboratory and across the DOE complex have been working diligently to reduce the size and footprint of this technology so that it can be used in a lot of different adaptations. So what you hear nowadays talked about mostly is small modular reactors, or SMRs. This really opens up the aperture and the industry to be applied in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places, and be purchased by a lot of different consumers. There are very few consumers that need 1,000 megawatts at a time. Now, there are those. We have a handful of them in this state, and there are a lot of people knocking on our door asking how much power is available. But there are more customers who need 200 megawatts or 50 megawatts at a time. There are communities in rural Alaska or parts of the country or the globe that need sustainable power that don't have that even today. So the small modular reactors and the micro reactors are an opportunity to expand this technology in ways that we've never been able to do before. Those technologies are actively going through the commercialization process and the licensure process so that they are purchasable on that market. I'm sure most of you have seen the criticality announcements over the last 6 weeks. We've had 5 new reactor technologies go critical. 3 of those 5 happened in Idaho, 1 in Utah, so we'll count that one as part of the region. So we're really winning in that capacity. So when it comes to the technology, there's a ton going on. I'm happy to answer any questions I possibly can, but we're really here to talk about workforce. So I want to kind of break down how the commercialization of the nuclear industry, specifically on the power generation side, looks. So I have it here in these kinds of categories. We look at it in 5 phases. There's the pre-decision phase. So if we were to have started this process last year, which many projects started making announcements in the last 2 or 3 years, so we'll give it kind of around 2025, that is the process that starts then, right, where we're talking about policy needs, regulation needs, project development, all kinds of research, site assessment and environmental work. All of that kind of work has to happen in the pre-decision phase. I think we're pretty well poised with INL being where it is in eastern Idaho and having access to a lot of the right scientists across the DOE complex for Idaho to be situated well to meet some of this demand. But as you might imagine, the number of these projects is continuing to grow, so there are only so many folks that can help support environmental assessments and all kinds of the policy and regulation space that we're about to enter into, which is kind of growing at a 10-fold speed. Then phase 2 is infrastructure development. So now we're talking about that plan has been decided on, right? We've made a decision. There's a couple of projects that are anticipated. There's a consumer at the end of that thing. We're all working towards building this project together. Now we're talking about the civil work, all the site prep, the environmental monitoring, putting together the supply chain and all the logistics, ensuring that we have oversight for quality assurance, quality control, et cetera. Phase 3 is the big fun stuff, right? We're actually going to build the thing. And as you might imagine, we're talking about thousands of construction workers on whatever series of sites that we are building that thing on. I'll make a addition to this part, which is the component of the small modular reactors that makes it potentially significantly more economically efficient than the large light-scale water reactors is that a lot of it is manufactured. So we aren't taking every single raw product to the site and then, donning 14,000 to 20,000 people on that site to construct it all. A lot of those components are getting manufactured and fabricated in those plants and then shipped to the site and then erected together. So there's a combination on the site of pure construction and then kind of connection and putting those pieces together. But we're talking about a reduction in how many bodies would be necessary to what we've seen 20, 30 years ago, and even with the Vogel plant. So we're trying to be thoughtful and efficient as far as the cost of those bodies, how tight our workforce is, those kinds of things all play into how the economics of an SMR are more viable and beneficial than one of these huge light water reactors. Phase 4 is operations. As time goes on in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see these projects pop up all over the country, all over the globe. These technologies have a lifespan of 40 to 80 years, potentially beyond that, as the NRC continues to monitor these technologies. So when we talk about the workforce that's necessary and how many bodies, we're talking about potentially a century's worth of jobs for every single one of these projects and every single one of these assets that gets built. And then lastly is phase 5, decommissioning. I hope to not be sitting here at that time telling you guys what kind of workforce we're going to need at that phase. I really hope to be retired by then. but we never know. So I always want to make sure that it's in here. It's something we need to think about, right? If we're doing this for the first time, right, if we're building these SMRs for the first time in the next 5 or 10 years, it is important that we start building the workforce for decommissioning much earlier than we would naturally, just because we haven't done it before. So making sure those pipelines are healthy and we're doing it far enough in advance. This is just that same information on a bar chart to kind of emphasize where the heavy lift will be as far as workforce concentration is concerned. It's relatively intuitive here. I've added INL demonstration projects. It's one thing to talk about commercial. Every other state in the country will just be talking about their commercial workforce impact, but because we have INL here, the demonstration work will also compound the workforce needs for the nuclear industry as we continue to grow and as we continue to demonstrate more commercial technologies out on the site. So we have both of those things happening at once. For those of you who know me relatively well, it wouldn't be a Hope Morrow presentation without a forecast. So I did develop a forecast for you. So I have 2 versions of this forecast. If we were to implement some of the projects that we have been talking about, combine that with the INL demonstrations we know are on the docket, and be thoughtful about the type of power we need to generate and the interest level that the state of Idaho has in hosting some of these projects, the community engagement that we've been participating in, this is roughly what the forecast would look like as of now. So we're talking about anywhere between 500 to 4,000 additional jobs year over year, just to sustain this industry to a reasonable amount within the state of Idaho. And then if you add the lifespan of those reactors into this conversation and the decommissioning conversation to the back end of this forecast, you can see how we have an extremely substantial economic opportunity here as a baseline, but really would be a massive investment to ensure that we have the workforce we need to fulfill these roles and support the industry at large. Something that I think is very interesting about the nuclear industry is that I think that it can model some of the gold standard industries that we already have. Healthcare comes to the top of mind when I think about an industry that does a good job at connecting jobs to jobs and career paths to career paths and isolating certain trainings that can jump someone from one position to another with a slight promotion or a slight on-ramp. They continue to be lifelong learners, like we heard President Barber mention. The nuclear industry has a very similar essence to it. This is just one example. For somebody who starts as a nuclear operations technician, right, you can get that degree right here at Idaho State University. You go and you do that work. You get to the point where you have a formal license. You're a reactor operator in research, or you can do that in the commercial space. You go into the commercial space long enough, you get enough hours, you take enough trainings, then you can be an operator trainee in the commercial space. Then you become a senior reactor operator with enough hours and enough credentials, and then you can move your way up to plant director, operations manager, you name it. This is one example of the ways that we can model good career growth and good career paths for Idaho kids that the education institutions can be directly involved in and will have to be to see that be successful. I think that there is a lot that already exists in the Idaho workforce ecosystem to support the energy industry and to support the nuclear industry. INL has been well supported by the Idaho institutions for 76 years, and that is not going to change now. But INL is not the only game in town anymore. We have all of our commercial partners on the reactor side. Then you have all of the suppliers who are manufacturing and fabricating all the components. Then you have, if we're talking about fuel recycling or creating that fuel from scratch, that's a whole new set of industries we've never even touched outside of the research space. So there's a ton of opportunity to scale those programs that currently exist, to connect pieces of curriculum and universities and colleges together, and then ultimately to use those institutions to qualify that workforce to walk out on that site and do that work. There are a lot of examples of how the Idaho institutions already do this, and this is just a snapshot of a lot of the programs that currently exist within their respective repertoires that are very beneficial to what we do and are necessary, that I think can fit into that scale, connect, and qualify categories as they are needed. You heard President Barber mention a Tech Hub Award. I wanted to bring this to your all's attention. I think it's very important when an industry shows up in a space or an employer shows up in a space, not just to come and say, hi, I have all of these problems and I need you to fix them for me. I'm a problem solver. I have been working with this vision, with these employers, with Idaho National Laboratory for 7 years. I have been working towards building out the nuclear workforce for that period of time. And in partnership with the institutions that are in this room, we have come together to say, we can go and find some of these dollars to bridge us from where the institutions are currently without bringing the burden to the Idaho taxpayers, expand those programs, meet those needs, at least for this period of time, as the industry starts to ramp up and can start to pay back into the ecosystem. So the INEC Tech Hub, which is founded right here in Idaho in partnership with Wyoming, was just awarded $40 million 2 weeks ago. There are 3 main project areas under that tech hub: reactor deployment, specifically accelerating reactor deployment timelines, growing the nuclear workforce in the Intermountain West, and then building out that nuclear supply chain in the Intermountain West. The nuclear workforce ecosystem component of this is, quite frankly, the most important piece from my perspective, and I think it's important that you all see it. In the last 2 years, this group of consortium members have brought in almost $20 million to just Idaho and Wyoming institutions to build out these programs specifically, and we are all working together. I know siblings don't always get along and the sandbox isn't always fun, but this sandbox is. The institutions play very well in this space. It's a pleasure to work with them and get to figure out who fills what space and who's interested in which components of this and who's willing to raise their hand and do the hard work to build it from scratch and be a good partner when it's time to scale. This is just a breakdown of that nuclear workforce project. So ultimately, it's a $13 million project, and we have a handful of focus areas. Construction trades, first and foremost. Based on those phases, you can understand why we would need to start ramping up the construction workforce, as if that's not already a tight enough space. Manufacturing and fabrication, of course. Operator programs are going to be very critical, and we're going to need to continue to scale them. And then chemical engineering technicians and engineering pathways in general are places that we need to continue to emphasize and grow, and into spaces we've never done before. So in particular for the chemical engineering tech, which is at Gillette College in Wyoming, BWXT, a commercial partner, is going to fabricate fuel in Gillette. So we're going to help them figure out how to do that in the community college space. And our agreement is that when that makes sense for it to come to Idaho and we have people who are going to fabricate fuel in Idaho, that the community colleges in Idaho will also be able to take that on.
Chair Gilbert, if I may, first of all, I just want to thank you for your partnership with the institutions. You've been really critical in driving this collaboration and helping all of us think differently about how we can be in service to nuclear in the state. Can you talk a little bit about the STEC program? Because you and I have talked about how critical this is for the state, and I don't want it to be lost on our board members about the investment that's happened there and the success of that program and its importance in the ecosystem. So thank you.
Absolutely. Vince Bowen isn't in the room, but even if he was, I would say this. The STEC program is the golden standard for nuclear operator training and anything that is in that technician space for the nuclear industry in the entire country. The STEC program is the lifeline to Idaho National Laboratory's ability to operate and demonstrate in this space, period. Outside of the Navy, which, big competitor, okay, STEC is that gold standard. They do an incredible job at not just teaching the curriculum that is important and necessary for them to understand the job, but they do it all hands-on. They do it in 2 years. They do it in connection with Idaho National Lab and the SMEs, and we could not be more pleased is not a strong enough word. I think that Idaho National Laboratory would suffer significantly without the STEC program. Yep. Okay, I think this is the part where I'm going to turn it over to Heidi.
Thank you. Just, is this on? For the record, is this on? Okay. I haven't spoken yet. Heidi Estrom, Chief Academic Officer. Is it on? Even closer? I'm usually teacher voice projecting. I just wanted to add with this, so Hope and I have been working pretty closely together, and then this summer I've spoken with each provost about their offerings in the nuclear space. And Hope mentioned this earlier. I think this is an area where our institutions really shine because they are building on the areas where they are already successful. So every institution is not doing the same thing, and that's appropriate. For example, all 4 community colleges are working hard on scaling their associate's level degrees in engineering or in heavy machinery or whatever area is most important or relevant for them. And then, of course, CEI has the specific programming you've already heard about. And you've already heard about ISUs. A couple of us got to have an up-close look at the really CTE, certificate through PhD scope of programming that ISU offers. U of I contributes in particular ways in the research space. Boise State adds with construction management and with cyber. So I think it's a really nice statewide picture you see of, so I just wanted to emphasize what Hope said earlier, that it's an area of a lot of collaboration and a lot of people doing appropriate scaling in the programs that they already have strengths in.
I have 3 slides that basically look like this to end this talk. But the point is, if you were to look at the industry in general and kind of close your eyes to the types of programs that need to exist and put them in categories of scale, connect, and qualify, I've done that, and then I've highlighted the programs that either already exist in the state or are already in conversation, and those that are not are things that are very easy as far as options for whichever institution would like to raise their hand and fill that gap. But I don't need to read them to you. They're relatively intuitive. The nice part about being this far along in the industry is that it's just about communicating and getting those right qualifications in the programs. We're not talking about skills that don't exist in other industries. So mostly welding, engineering fields, cybersecurity, you name it. In the Connect conversation, there's a lot of opportunities to build certifications in the middle of this instead of building something from scratch from the ground up that's a 4-year or 6-year program. How do you build those bridges with certifications? U of I and ISU in particular are working hard at that with INL actively. We're looking at a handful of additional certs right now. And then on the qualify to start, there are some gaps here. Pete Reese, who I believe is in the room, who has some great experience with quality assurance and NDE. These are areas that we really need some significant help from the public education system that we don't actively have, but we have institutions in the room that are raising their hand to say, this might be the right place for us, and in partnership with the board, we can make all of that happen, come to fruition as it makes sense for the timeline and as it makes sense for the industry.
And I would just add with this one, or even with the previous slide, President Wagner had up about the 2+2 programs that they're building with CEI. That's a critically important space for Idaho State in particular to be working on now with CEI and CSI that will get more students into these programs from the community colleges more quickly, more seamlessly. So we're really happy to see that growth already in progress. The other degree I will mention that, again, is not very shiny, but is really important is that Associates of Engineering that the institutions, the 2-year institutions have added that will help them be in alignment for those engineering programs at the 4-year institutions.
I would just add an additional point that Applied STEM Institute that you heard President Barber mention is the 2 years before that part, right? So we're working on the 2+2 bridge, but how do we plus from that high school space into, we're earning college credit, we're experiencing these types of fields in a way that's very intentional, is on a college campus, is embedded with the SMEs, right? INL folks can't be at every single high school all of the time, but we can be at a community college, we can be at a university. And so bringing that group together and building that bridge at that point in the juncture as well, we're trying to build that whole landscape out.
Just one piece I'll add on to that. We heard earlier today about the critical role that high school advisors and counselors play, and even science teachers in helping students understand what possibilities are ahead for them or could be ahead for them in nuclear. So I think this is another place where we can lean into our systemness and think about how to help people imagine futures that they might not have otherwise thought of.
And Chair Gilbert, if I may, touching on that with what Heidi said, we had a call this morning with the Nuclear Task Force. I'm the representative for the board on that task force with the governor's office, and we discussed the success of the Semiconductor for All program that was done in partnership between Workforce Development Council and our higher education institutions, and the success of working in partnership with SDE on getting that into our K through 12 space, and the interest in doing something very similar to that and growing on that basis of experience here to help our K through 12 body really understand what their options are and what the reality of present day nuclear is. So there's a lot of passion for that. And I think we have a lot of opportunity attached to the recent work that INL and Hope and her team have been doing.
And then finally, I'll just point you in your board materials under this work session on page 19, tab 1. That's where you have the list, and it's in very tiny print. So it works better if you can look at it on a computer and increase it. But a reminder of all the programming that we already do have at all of the institutions across the state that are in support of or in some way connected to assisting with this significant effort that's ahead. And I think with that, we can stand for questions. Or discussion?
Hope you talk about, you love forecasting. You know, think about, do we have the people and here in the state to meet the need? And then I just start thinking about housing and all of that sort of thing, and I'm sure you're leaning in on that as well.
The short answer is no, we don't have enough people. I think that our workforce constraints will actually be one of the bottlenecks to our economic success in this industry, period. Now, I do think that there are alleviation points, right? We'll continue to use technology to make these technologies easier, right, and take less labor. But as far as manufacturing the components and putting them together and operating them, like, those are human activities, and they will always be human activities. So I do think that we will hit a natural population constraint when it comes to our ability to meet this moment. I think that's okay, right? Idaho wants to grow the way that Idaho should grow, and I think that's the right thing to do. Utah is on a different trajectory, and I think as long as we continue to stay partnered with our regional states and we take components of the industry that make sense for us and meet that moment, Idaho's version of the moment, I think that's the right balance. There are a lot of other opportunities that are kind of in the ether that aren't just the small modular reactor deployments. We're talking about the innovation campuses or any kind of fuel fabrication, these kinds of things. That's all additive to the conversation we're having right now. So this forecast, I literally could update it every single day, and if I had the time in my schedule to do so, I might do it. But it does change very frequently, and there will be obvious impacts. From my perspective, though, there are industries that are worth those impacts. They're worth the benefit to Idaho lives, and this is one of those industries.
Mine is more of a comment building on, Heidi, what you talked about on the 7th through 12th grade side. As you know, we've got the Idaho Career Ready Students Grant, and although most of those dollars have been expended in the last 3 years, as they should have been, there is talk and interest in building some high school programs that focus on nuclear energy and critical minerals. And I know we're already talking and kind of working. In addition to some of the occupations that were listed, we've got welding programs. We have some of those programs, but identifying what very specifically within building upon the nuclear side of cybersecurity and others, those are areas or niches that we don't have in place yet in the 7-12, 9-12 setting, but we want to be. And so as we talk and look at how we incorporate, it may not be an entire semester class, but what are strands that we can build into courses in CTE that already exist that make sense, that provide more than just exploratory knowledge, but also lead students to think in terms of other professions. I share that to say that's where we are right now at the beginning part, to say what can we do to add to the pipeline so that as students are graduating, they're recognizing what does come next in post-secondary because they've had some exposure and some education in some of these areas.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? David?
Some of us got a tour of INL a couple months ago, and it was very informative. And this is always something that seems like it's just in the future, but it seems like it's getting close here, right? So can you give us sort of a scope of what's going to happen at INL and what, like how many reactors are we talking about, of what type and what schedule?
Yeah. So it's always kind of been this in the future conversation. I'll come back to the 5 criticalities as a starting point for where we're headed. Those 5 reactor technologies, 3 of which went critical, which just means we turned on that reaction, it happened, we monitored it, and then we turned it off, and it all happened how it was supposed to. So that means go critical. Some people think that has a negative connotation. It's very good.
Yeah.
Just everybody just clear. 3 of the 5 of those happened at Idaho National Laboratory under DOE oversight with the NRC involved and that kind of thing. One of them happened in Utah and one of them happened in Texas. Most of the reactor companies, because the licensure timeline is so expensive and it is so long, a way to make that shorter is to do a lot of that work under the physical oversight of the Department of Energy, which is why a lot of those companies are choosing to bring their things, their toys, their technology to Idaho National Laboratory physically to go critical, to go through that process. So you're going to see a couple of different versions of this. So if you've heard of the concept launch pad or the dome, you saw a picture of the dome actually, I think, on President Barber's slide deck. Those are 2 ways that we are demonstrating technologies. In the dome, that's where the microreactors go. So those ones that fit on the back of a semi-truck. Right now, the Radiant microreactor is the first one that's going in there. I actually think it just left its headquarters in California last night. There's a video of the semi-truck pulling out at 2 a.m. or whatever. So it's on its way to Idaho right now. It's going to get loaded through the dome, the new dome door, and they're going to stand it up in there, do all the right protocols and regulation procedures, and they're going to turn it on. It will go critical for the first time, so that will be 6 at Idaho National Laboratory. On the launch pad sounds super cool. It's just a piece of land out in the middle of Idaho at the moment. But the concept is that for what doesn't fit in that dome, we're going to support the commercial industry partners in building their pilot reactors, likely at commercial scale, out there under DOE and NRC oversight. So Oklo and Allo are out there right now already doing that. I don't remember the exact number, but I think we had like over 48 applicants to the launch pad last time I checked with our real estate gal. So there are like 12 plots that have been identified by DOE as part of the launch pad currently. We have 48 applicants. So you can imagine all of the different companies and technologies that are interested in utilizing that piece of property to build their thing for the first time and get through that part of the licensure process. What's really interesting, though, about the launch pad, unlike the dome where you bring it in and then you take it out, those are permanent assets, right? That's a full-blown SMR that is now located at Idaho National Laboratory. So inherently, there is a permanent economic tie with that company and with that asset, however we choose to use it in partnership with the Department of Energy. But those companies will have physical presence here for a long period of time, and likely their technologies will be here for a long period of time. Then you can overlay the innovation campus concept, right? We're talking about interim storage of spent fuel. There's still conversations about permanent storage or components of permanent storage, but really the focus is on recycling. How do we take what is considered to be spent when really 96% of that material can be recycled? And how do we use that as an economic engine to recycle that material and feed it back into the industry? Idaho is one of the 5 states that's been selected to be considered to do that work on behalf of the country, on behalf of DOE. And then
Is that expected to be narrowed down to one site or two? Or
I would assume 3.
3, okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, just from transport, it would make sense to have them kind of across the country. And 2, there are a lot of political and economic and other factors that play into this. And so you start a little big, you end up with 2, maybe 3 successfully, then we've done our part. And then the supply chain part is the other piece of this. As you can continue to see these criticalities come, the power purchase agreements go through, the communities bring in these projects, the manufacturers and the fabricators and all of those components of the supply chain are starting to open up shop, right? You're seeing spin-offs from these companies, you're seeing spin-offs from Idaho National Laboratory. I lived in Idaho Falls for a lot of years, and I visit basically weekly now, and the number of new offices that have opened up, new signage, right? These are small welding companies or manufacturers or boutique aerospace manufacturers that want into the nuclear industry. It's already changing the makeup of the city of Idaho Falls and surrounding communities, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon.
Thank you.
Are there additional questions? If not, thank you guys for your help. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Let's power through, I think. Stay on track. Executive Director, do you want to, which do you prefer, Executive Director? Well, actually, I'm going to ask the boss. What do you want to do? Let's have a short break. Okay, let's come back in 5 minutes. We'll start at 3:50 and go to PPGA.
Yeah. No such thing as a 10-minute break around here.
Okay, I'm just doing on what I'm told.
Yeah.
Were we asking about tomorrow or today?
Today, we're today, 3 and 8. No, we're like right now, until 5:45. It sucks. I don't think we have a lot. I just have a note from me and Jan, so I come to y'all if we get a question. Yes, that's part of the reason I went to school. Yeah. That's kind of.
Anyway, I'll remind me, I'll tell you. Yeah.
It's all good. Flip. That's all consent.
Yeah.
Three. Yep, for that one.
That is the easy one, right?
Yes, that's easy. And then 8. Yep. And I don't think either of them will be long, but it's worth in case they ask some.
Two minutes. Can we take our seats, please?
Superintendent?
Director Reese.
Let's rock. Let's rock. Don't make me warn you, Pete. Okay, we'll come back to order. We will now turn to Board Member Keogh, and Board Member Keogh, we can see you in the rooms, just so, and the PPGA agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Board Chair Gilbert. I appreciate the ability to present over Zoom the Planning, Policy, and Governmental Affairs Committee agenda. And I think that our Policy Director, Allison Hinken, has joined you at the table there.
She is, yes.
Great. The first item is the board agenda and cover pages changes. It's an information item. I believe board members have noticed that our staff has been involved in a continuous improvement effort to try to make things more transparent and also more streamlined and efficient and effective. You may have noticed on the consent calendar, for example, that some of our different committees had their second readings were there. And that was due to there being no change from the first and second readings in those rules. Of course, as a reminder, we can always pull anything off of consent that we want to. And then in between second and third readings, if there are any changes, we will be addressing those as well. I don't know if anyone has any questions or if Allison wants to add anything at this point, but this was an information item to bring everyone up to speed in addition to our board members.
Allison, would you like to add anything?
Hold on. I'm on now?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Hi, for the record, I'm Allison Hinken, the Policy Director for the State Board of Education. And on this item, the only thing I would add is that in addition to moving items around on your agenda, we also did make some updates to the cover page itself. So we split up the discussion section that used to sort of be fairly vague into now separate sections for discussion and proposal So you've got background, you've got proposal, instead of sort of background and discussion all being in one section. We also moved the reference sections to the end of the cover page so that it's really putting the information that we think board members need to see most towards the top of that cover page. So that's the only other thing that I would point out in terms of changes. We do anticipate there could be some additional changes as we continue to work with the board and in really thinking through how to continue to make improvements. And so there are possible edits that could be made in the future.
Good. Are there questions? I don't see any questions. Board Member Keel.
Thank you. The next item on the PPGA agenda is Board Policy 1A, Policy Making Authority. This is the second reading, and it's an action item. This policy addresses how we develop our policies and how they're amended. Some changes were made based on feedback received in between the first and second reading. Those include a clear delineation between the board staff and managing externally versus internally proposed changes, and clarification regarding the engagement of impacted stakeholders and the broader public. And Allison, do you have anything to add?
I do not. I think that's what it is.
Great. Are there any questions from any board members?
I don't see any. If you'd like to go to motion.
Yes, I would move to approve the second reading of amendments to Board Policy 1A, Policy Making Authority, as provided in Attachment 1.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Cindy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Go ahead.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
The next item is Board Policy 7C, CTE certification. This is a second reading, and it's an action item. This is regarding CTE certification, which including endorsements, which endorsements may be issued by CTE. This also involves changes based on feedback between the first and second readings. Those changes included correction to the required cosmetology license, addition of a new military science 6 through 12 endorsement that was inadvertently left out of the first reading due to a staff oversight. I'd ask Allison or CTE Administrator Pete Reese if they have anything additional.
Director Reese.
Thank you very much. For the record, I'm Pete Reese, State Administrator for Idaho Division of Career Technical Education. No additional things to add here. These are critical additions to the policy in order to recognize military science and forest products, which will begin this fall, and we need these in place so that we can endorse teachers immediately.
Great. Allison, anything to add?
No additions.
Okay.
Right. I would move to approve the second reading of Board Policy 7C, Career Technical Educator Certification, as provided in Attachment 1.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item is the Educator Preparation Program Work Group Report. This also is an information item. Based on feedback from the field, Superintendent Critchfield convened a group of leaders from Idaho's public educator preparation programs to discuss classroom management challenges faced by Idaho educators and how the education prep programs could help address them. I'll turn the time over to Allison and to the superintendent.
Great. So I'll just add a little bit of information for board members. So board members, the key thing that happened here is that the EPPs, our educator preparation programs, were tasked with developing a plan to address pre-service classroom management support. And the EPP staff reviewed the superintendent's priority concerns and mapped existing coursework, field experiences, and assessments across institutions to frameworks like the Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, or MTSS, and the Danielson framework.
They provided 2 different deliverables as a part of this process. One of the resulting deliverables identifies strengths and gaps, and so it's a memo to really outline what that plan is. The second deliverable is really mapping out their coursework relative to those frameworks. And we do have that example available. I think we just have to have them pull it up onto the screen. Or maybe I need to. We'll see. There it is. And with that, I will hand it off to Heidi Estrom, and some of our educator preparation program staff are here as well.
So just to add a little more context, this is
You're not on.
I don't know why I'm having mic problems today. This is another area where I think the board's K-PhD vision and scope is an advantage. So Superintendent Critchfield came to us, came to higher ed, and came to the educator preparation programs in particular, and talked to them about what she was hearing in the field and concerns she was hearing around classroom management. And to their credit, these 4 public educator preparation programs responded, and they responded by doing just what Allison has described. So this is not the whole document. You have the whole documents in your materials, but just wanted to give you a sense of the work they did this spring to take a really careful look at their own programs and honestly assess them and look for where they were meeting what they felt like were expectations around classroom management, teaching classroom management, and where they could do it better. So rather than hear Allison and me talk about these issues, I've asked each of the 4 of them to share one brief idea, with you. So I'll tell you who's in the room. So at the table with me, I have Emma Wood from Idaho State University, the Assistant Dean. It might be in, actually I might have the wrong title. You could update that. Brooke Levins, who is now the interim provost, formerly the dean of College of Education, Health and Human Sciences at University of Idaho. And then on the screen, we also have, or joining us by Zoom, we have Royal Toy, the assistant provost from LCSC, who was involved in this work, and Sherry Dismuke, the associate dean for educator preparation. So we'll just go in that order, and each of them will share at least one change they're making based to this work in collaboration with the superintendent this spring.
Hello. So here at ISU, we're focusing on giving our students more intentional field experiences. And one example we have is reworking the classroom observations that we have in our entry-level child development course. So in the past, these observations have centered on learning theory. And we're expanding that so that now students will also observe developmental behaviors directly. Think about how those behaviors shape teaching practice and classroom management. One exciting change in addition to this will be the ability to do some of these observations in the after-school program that's sponsored by the Boys and Girls Club, where children have demonstrated a greater need for behavioral supports. And we want every section of this particular course to hit the same outcomes. And so what we're doing is building specific modules that will be embedded across all sections. And our Dr. Esther Natuli is leading this work, overseeing both those revisions and the rollout. And we'll have pilot data to share out at the end of spring 2027.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for the opportunity to share about this collaborative work, and thanks to Superintendent Critchfield for calling us together. That's one thing that I'll continue to highlight in front of this body, is that the collaborative approach that the institutions take as educator preparation programs alongside the Idaho Department of Ed and of course the Office of the State Board. It is a hallmark of our state and one we should be quite proud of as we think about the scope of preparing K-12 students moving into higher ed, and then how we're preparing educators to go back into those spaces. So this was a really great opportunity for us to do a little self-reflection, to talk about what we're doing well, and of course opportunities for growth. And of course working across the 4 institutions proved really remarkable, as it always does when we work together. And so to highlight a few things that we're doing at the University of Idaho, we have we redesigned our elementary classroom education or classroom management course to be conducted in the field. So what that course looks like actually is our students are out in classrooms across the Moscow area, and they're working directly with teachers and administrators, looking at how classrooms are set up, what management practices are in place, what routines are in place, how do they conduct an IEP, how do they read a 504. So they're directly in the field working with our field partners. And one of the exciting things is that we actually have a current educator teaching that course alongside us. So a practitioner who is really in the field doing the work. He's also our community and schools director. So he understands what teachers need to be successful in classrooms. We've been doing that course field-based for several years now, but now we're excited to move that into our secondary program. So we often know that classroom management, sometimes our secondary teachers kind of get a small version of that because much of their coursework is dedicated to the content area instead of to the pedagogy of practice. And so this new course that we're designing is purposely designed to help our secondary teachers develop the classroom management skills that they need to be successful as we're interacting with students who come with a host of new realities and new challenges perhaps. Trauma-based pedagogy is integrated into that course, and many of the things in terms of what Allison talked about, MTSS, and tiered interventions, particularly those tier 3 interventions that we know are effective for our students who come with the most problematic behavior. So we're really excited about that continuum of practice that we're engaged in as we help both elementary and secondary teachers get field-based experience taught by practitioners in the field who are not far removed from this work. And it coalesces around what we are hearing from our school partners in this co-design process.
Royal, you're up next.
Yes, thank you so very much. One of the things that I think that we're doing at LC State and we move forward with is very similar to what my colleagues have mentioned so far, is that we've redesigned and reapplied some of the things that we're doing in our curriculum outside in our pedagogical opportunities, in our field experience. So in our special education focused course, we're looking more at the tier 3 interventions in classroom management and opportunities there. And then also in our classroom management course, where we have applied field experience, we've also redirected some of those experiences to include more focus on the actual application within the classroom. As we see that we focus so much on trying to get things prepared for our candidates and get them ready to go out in the field, this direction that we've headed all together gives us an opportunity to move forward with the experience in the classroom where they actually are applying what they've learned and then giving them more focus and more direction in those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions that we've been trying to accomplish in the past. So that's where we're at LC State.
Thank you. Sherry?
Thank you, and I want to thank Superintendent Critchfield again for bringing us together, because when we're together, we build on each other's expertise and had the opportunity to really learn from each other. At Boise State, one thing that we have been doing for a while now is to follow our graduates out into their first year of teaching. And one thing they have been telling us loud and clear is they feel fairly confident in everyday classroom management, procedures, and routines, but they didn't feel prepared to deal with students that have chronic behaviors in the classroom. So one thing we've already submitted curriculum changes and found some wiggle room in our elementary program to add a second classroom management course. So they will have their first course that deals with things like environment, creating positive environments, procedures and routines, reinforcing basic tier 1 behaviors. But we will now be adding our special education course in classroom management for all of our elementary students as well, because it deals with the areas that my colleagues have been talking about: trauma-informed practices, tier 2 and tier 3 behaviors, and what kind of developing behavioral plans for students with those more chronic behaviors. We're really excited to roll that out, but we're also looking for space for us to be able to do that with our secondary teachers. And I think, as Dr. Blevins talked about, it's hard to do that because they have so many content credit requirements. Doesn't allow them to take as many pedagogy or classroom management type courses. So we are looking for ways to bring that to secondary and feel like we are ready to roll out the new courses next fall. And hopefully we will see an improvement in that area. Thank you very much.
So one thing I hope you notice is that
often academics are accused of working really slowly. These conversations started in January, and people are already talking about changes that will start in a couple weeks in their fall classes. So I'm really pleased with the ways that they responded and the conversation that was initiated by board members. Another outcome of this work is a framework we now have for teaching classroom management, and really a process for moving forward, for continuing these kinds of conversations and collaborations. So this probably won't be the last time you hear from us. I hope this is the start of, or continuation of really good work together.
I'm sitting very calmly, but I'm doing cartwheels in my mind. I'm so thrilled, and I really want to commend our deans, our leaders in these programs, and Heidi, thank you so much to facilitate all of that. This was a conversation our board had months ago where we really identified what our customers were saying, and I am just so grateful for the effort and the work, and I know there's more to do, but to be to this point at this time is really exciting. And I know we've talked about this, and I know I've said this before, but I have to say it again. We are a board of education, and everything that we talk about here, what the lab is looking for, what any industry is looking for, what post-secondary is looking for in preparation, we accomplish none of that unless we're preparing our teachers in the way that they need to do that. And so in my view, the colleges of education are the most critical colleges that we have. We get nothing else done, learned, accomplished unless we have the expert level of teachers that we want to have in our K-12 experience. And so I'll get off my soapbox, but we'll be thanking all of you, and thanks for letting me be a part of it, and I'm excited where we're going from here. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Which should surprise no one. But first and foremost, I'd like to commend you for what you guys have done on this. I think it's critical. So my thought process goes beyond that first year. Are we building a system, whether it's continuing credit, and that's a totally different conversation, where we're taking teachers who have not had this opportunity yet to be able to get this additional training? The second point, just as an observation, have we moved this also into training for our principals? Because at some point that umbilical cord's got to be cut from the universities, and it's a responsibility. Personal view, it becomes a responsibility of the principal then to ensure, not the expertise, but the understanding of where we can get this additional training that we work with. So is that also within the plans of where we're going in this direction?
Thanks, Board Member Kaler. Great question. I think this is on. So to answer your question, I think this is a bigger question about all the great work we're doing as educator preparation programs to prepare future teachers for the realities of today's classrooms. And the question is, like, for those who've been in the field for quite some time, how are we upskilling them? And that's a conversation we're regularly having with the department. This fall, we'll have statewide professional development days that are centered around these key areas to equip currently practicing teachers with many of these things that we're already working to infuse into our educator preparation programs. Frankly, I was asked this question by a legislator last session who said, well, we've put all this money into literacy. Why do we need to keep putting money into literacy if y'all are doing this as EPPs? And my response is, because we can train the new generation of teachers, but who is taking care of those who are already in the field? And I think that's a narrative we have to continue to combat as we're talking about the spectrum of educators, those who are coming out of our programs and those who are practicing. So I know there's work happening at the department. Each of our institutions also offers professional development for teachers across the state that upskills them in many of these key areas that we know are relevant not just for incoming teachers, but for those who are practicing in the field. Your question about the principalship is crucial, right? We know that school leadership matters in terms of the uptake of any practice that we think is quality. So from literacy to classroom management, it is a school leader who is critical to ensuring that happens. So that's part of the conversation, actually, Superintendent Critchfield has asked us to look at, is how are we infusing these also in our principalship and even our superintendent programs. And I would say we are looking closely at those things and finding ways to infuse them as school leaders. How are you leading literacy reform? How are you leading reform around classroom management, et cetera?
Any additional questions or comments? If not, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Board Member Keough.
Thank you, Chair Gilbert, and I appreciate everyone that's worked on this important project, and I appreciate Superintendent Critchfield's leadership in moving this forward and in continuing this important work. The next item on the agenda is an action item. It's generative AI in education framework, and you may recall Senate Bill 1227 in the 2026 session addresses generative artificial intelligence in K-12 public school system. The statute requires development of statewide guidance regarding the implementation and responsible use of generative AI in Idaho schools. The 2026 Idaho Generative Artificial Intelligence in Education Framework is provided here for board review and approval. Because of the pace of change in the field, the department intends to review and update the framework annually. And I would hand it over to Superintendent Critchfield. I believe she has a staff person that will also weigh in on this for us. Superintendent?
Thank you, Chair Keough. I'm going to pass the baton over to Dr. Thunstrom. He's the director of our content and curriculum at the department. After I just say one comment, as our chair referenced recent legislation that went into play, I believe that the AI legislation is one of the most misunderstood pieces of legislation of anything that came out of the session. There's nothing in it that compels anyone to utilize AI at any level for any content area for any reason. What it does direct is for our board to establish a framework or guidelines whereby if it is going to be used at certain grade levels in certain ways, what are best practices around that? And so I've heard quite a bit around, why are we forcing schools to now use AI? We are not. And nothing about what the board action today will change any type of requirement or course change in a local classroom. It's all still directed by the local board. And so I want to underscore that before Dr. Thunstrom goes through what this will look like. So with that, I will turn it to him. And thanks for being here virtually.
Thank you, Superintendent Critchfield. Thank you, board members. In looking at the generative AI framework, and as was mentioned, this is a component that's specifically called out in Senate Bill 1227. In addition to the framework, the department has also drafted AI standards as well as a part of this change in law. To accomplish this, the department convened a statewide group, a work group consisting of K-12 educators, school administrators, technology leaders, cybersecurity experts, higher ed representatives, and other educational stakeholders to collaboratively and very intentionally look at what this framework could be. In 1227, local education agencies are expected to build policies and procedures that are in alignment with the framework. So we wanted to create something that was applicable throughout Idaho in a variety of different settings and build guiding principles that were applicable to all. The proposed AI framework, you would see it establishes that statewide vision for really responsible, ethical, and most importantly, human-centered implementation. We, again, wanted to be very intentional with both the framework and the AI standards that really these could be implemented even in schools that are not using technology at all. We can teach these principles and provide the guidance so that students are prepared for AI in their life, but not necessarily tie them to a screen in a school to be able to implement these frameworks and standards. It really provides that guidance to LEAs, public charter schools in developing those policies and professional learning opportunities, best practices in instruction and implementation. As mentioned, the AI framework really includes guiding principles for implementation for schools, recommendations for that professional learning, considerations related to academic integrity and assessment, recommendations for LEAs in purchasing and evaluating generative AI platforms, not just using the first thing that comes their way, and especially not using free platforms. Model policy is also included. We worked closely with ISBA to include some policy language that, again, optionally could be used and adapted in different LEA settings. And then we wanted to engage families as well. So there's a family engagement component there and the resources that parents can use to both guide the discussion with their own kiddos in collaboration with what's happening in a school setting. So, and as also was mentioned, we know AI and emerging technologies, they're changing so quickly that this is one of those that will have to be, reflected and reviewed annually. With that, I would open it to questions and happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
Questions? This is going to be a living, breathing document.
Yes, as we know that AI is not static and we expect changes, we would expect that this would be something that can come back as we learn more, know how to inform and provide updated resources. I would expect that there would be tweaks from time to time, or should be.
So what is your feedback loop in terms of doing that?
Dr. Thunstrom, did you hear the question? That's probably a better question for you.
Yeah, so some of the methods that we have, we've also coordinated to have 14 AI tech innovators throughout the state in our regions. And they're going to be working really, really closely with LEAs in their regional areas. These are also teachers, they're practicing teachers. So they are going to be kind of our frontline defense and pulling feedback on what needs to be changing. We have AI work groups, thanks to Senator Cook and others as well. And those groups are continuing to meet to stay up on what practices are still relevant, what might be changing in the field. And those work groups include educators, it includes legislators, it includes representatives from career and out in industry and higher ed folks. So we wanted a broad stroke again. And that work group does not necessarily just meet annually, it will meet on an ongoing basis to continue to evaluate, coupled with the feedback that we're getting from LEAs as well.
Good, thank you. Are there any additional questions? I don't see any. Board Member Keough, if you want to go to motion.
I would move to approve the 2026 Idaho Generative Artificial Intelligence in Education Framework as submitted in Attachment 1, and authorize the Idaho State Department of Education to make non-substantive administrative changes to the document, including formatting and addressing typographical errors, grammar, consistency, and syntax.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Chairman Gilbert and board members. The next item is a rule docket, and that it starts our rule docket chain on our agenda here this afternoon. And this one is rule docket 08, 02, 03, 26, 02, content standards. And it's a proposed rule docket that addresses the documents that are incorporated by reference. And the department will carry this docket to the legislature. And Christine, do you have anything to brief us on this afternoon?
Yes, I do. Thank you. My name is Christine Moriarty, and I'm the Policy Director at the department. I will just quickly add that, I'll talk about the changes to the rule itself under the thoroughness rule, and then if you have any subject matter specific questions, I might pass those off to Dr. Thunstrom or Greg Wilson to answer. But the changes that are being made to the rule reflect updates that are going to happen. And one of those that already happened is some changes to the career readiness competencies. And so the date of adoption by the board is being updated in the rule to reflect that from the June 17th meeting. We are adding the newly adopted mathematics, digital literacy, and AI content standards to the incorporated by reference list. And then we are restoring ELA and science content standards to the incorporated by reference list. ELA, science, and math as well were removed by Idaho Code 33118B in 2022, and that statute sunsets on July 30th of next year. And so we want to put those back into the rules so that they can continue to be reviewed and adopted by the board and approved by the legislature, along with the rest of the content standards. And I think that is about it. If there are any questions for me, I'm happy to take those.
Any questions for Christine or the department on this? If not, I would move to approve the proposed rule docket number 08-0203-2602 pertaining to documents incorporated by reference, including the K-12 academic content standards.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Cindy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. The next rule docket is 08-0203-2601, graduation requirements and assessment. This also is an action item. It's focused on the sections of rule related to graduation requirements and assessments. The changes clarify the graduation requirements related to civics, government, and digital literacy without increasing credit requirement totals. The assessment section amendments relate to assessment exemptions for limited English proficient students and updates to the language to align with practices allowed by federal law that address feedback from the field. The department will be carrying this rule docket, and so I would ask if the department has any comments.
Not much. You pretty much covered it. I'll just add that, as you said, it will not increase the number of credits to graduate. It clarifies the digital literacy graduation requirement by aligning it with the standards. And yeah, with the assessment part of it, what was happening with limited English proficient students was that they would have the opportunity to have an exemption if they were recently enrolled students within the United States. However, the deadline for that exemption was not in line with what the federal requirement was. So they were, where they should have been able to get an exemption for their exams, they were not able to. And so we are updating that assessment requirement.
Chair Keough,
Thank you.
if I can
Yes.
add one item or just one note. Many times the rule begins here and then proceeds to the legislature. In this case, and the one before and the one after, these are changes that the board is making after legislative action has taken place. So we are not initiating any of these things. We are closing the circle on legislative action that's already taken place.
Good note. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great addition, Superintendent. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions? If not,
Yes, hang on. Yeah, Pete?
This is more of a, perhaps not philosophical. Are we asking for the right things for graduation credits? Or are we still operating off of a system that's been around for a very long time? So as we've looked at high schools and what we're expecting the children to have a fundamental mastery of, is it of value to them, or do we need to have a hard conversation of what is and is not of worth for a child to come out of high school?
I'd be happy to address that, Madam Chair.
Please.
Pete, you're in a fortunate position timing-wise with the board in that this has been a conversation with us over the last 3 years, and this rule change today really ties a lot of that into a bow, where we have been looking at updating what's been in existence for graduation requirements to include digital literacy. We've made adjustments with financial literacy. There are the updates to our senior project. All of those things had been worked on and were intended to get to the goal line that you're talking about. I'm happy to show you exactly how that changed and what looks different now as a kind of a total package. But I feel very confident in, I should never say that because then something's going to happen. I feel really great about the work that we've done in the state to align what we want our students to know and be able to do with where we are with the required graduation credits.
Good, because that takes a burden off of my heart. This is long overdue, and so I'm just very happy that we're seeing it being done now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's an ongoing conversation, and I think my sense is, and my hope, I guess, is the board will continue to engage on it. And I believe there are legislators that also will continue to engage on it as well. I know Senator Lance has spent considerable time in this interim going around the state, visiting with different stakeholders, talking about structure of our K-12 system, where it is today, where it came from, and where we all collectively think it ought to go in the future. So I think we'll continue to evolve with this discussion, which is as it should be, so, in my opinion. So, any other questions on this rule docket?
I don't see any board member queue.
I would then move to approve the proposed rule docket 08-0111-2601 pertaining to graduation requirements and assessments.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right, next rule docket is 08-0202-2601. This rule relates to proposed changes related to certification, educator preparation, and bullying. The board will be carrying this docket to the legislature, and I'd ask Allison to review the changes for us, please.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. Board members, this section of rule is fairly substantial and is actually only a drop in the bucket. We are planning to do additional changes to this section of rule in partnership with the department and with the Division of Career Technical Education going into next year. So this is sort of part 1 of 2 in changes. All of these changes were identified as being time sensitive. So these were not things that we felt like we could wait a year on. The first thing is that in alignment with statutory changes made during the 2026 session, there's a proposed change to section 111, which eliminates a redundant bullying report required of school districts. This is just getting ourselves in direct alignment with statute. The rest of the changes really relate to certification and educator preparation, and that includes both traditional certification and educator preparation, as well as alternative and non-traditional routes, and career technical education certification. So there's quite a bit here. There are changes proposed in sections 015, 016, 021, 042, and 100. These changes include a shift in the hours required in educator preparation programs, increasing the hours of pedagogy needed, and decreasing the endorsement hours. This is being proposed in response response to the Educator Preparation Program Work Group that you heard from earlier today to increase the pedagogy hours to include more classroom management work in those hours. The next change is that in an effort to approve innovative ideas to address teacher shortages, we are proposing a reduction in the language outlining requirements for non-traditional routes to certification to allow the process and minimum expectations for non-traditional programs to be outlined in board policy. This really is just to ensure that we are able to adjust when our institutions bring us really great ideas, that we're not prevented from approving them based on language that is in rule that is more difficult to update. So there will still be some minimum requirements in the rule, but we're taking out most of the specifics so that we can address that through board policy and through your approval of programs rather than being bound by the rule. The next thing that we want to hit on is the removal of industry experience hours for career technical education certification to allow the board to approve industry-specific hours to better address CTE educator shortages. Please note that we also anticipate that there will be a policy that will be developed along next to this, and this is also in response to statutory change. And I would hand off to Director Reese to provide a little bit more information about that particular change.
Yes, thank you, Allison. It's a well-known fact that we are running into significant shortages of qualified CTE teachers around the state of Idaho. And it doesn't matter if you're in a large district, in an urban area, or in a rural part of the state. The ability to recruit and retain folks that have industry hours is significant. This was further validated by a recent Office of Performance evaluation report that was done and presented to the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee last Friday. And so what we're doing is moving forward with the removal of these in response to House Bill 832, which was enacted on July 1st, moving through to remove those same references from rule so that we can put in discrete hour requirements into policy, which we have in draft and are now working with review with various administrators, teachers, and industry members around the state.
Before I wrap up, I would also invite the department to add any additional information, as this rule was very much a collaborative effort between all three agencies. Christine or Greg, do you have any additions?
You don't, Allison. I think that you covered it for us. Thank you.
With
Thank
that, we would
you,
stand
Allison.
for questions. Yep.
Oh, thank you, Allison, and thank you, Administrator Reese. Appreciate it. And I also extend appreciation to our three agencies and staff for working through this. This is one of those things that we're working in tandem on some things. And so I've appreciated the cooperation and collaboration. So if there's no other questions, I know it's a lot. If there aren't any, I would move to approve the proposed rule docket number 08-0202-2601 pertaining to bullying and certification alignment.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. The next rule docket is 08-0202-2602, driver's education, and this is also an action item. This proposed rule docket proposes to change the operating procedures for Idaho Public Driver Education Programs, also known as the Driver Ed Manual, which is a document incorporated by reference. These updates remove outdated references and clarify provisions related to instructional delivery methods, including online coursework approval, standards, and instructor requirements. The department will be carrying this docket, and so I'd ask Christine if she has anything she would like to add.
Sure, just a couple of things. There are references in the manual to the International Association for K-12 Online Learning, and my understanding is that association is now obsolete, and so those references are being removed. The more substantive change being made is removing the medical examination requirement for classroom driver ed instructors. So driver ed instructors who are actually driving with students will still have the medical examination, but those who are only working in the classroom would not have to undergo the required examination.
Any questions?
Do not see any, nope.
If not, then I would move to approve the proposed rule docket number 08-0202-2602 pertaining to the incorporated document operating procedures for Idaho public driver education programs.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Cindy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. The next rule docket is 08-0202-2603, accreditation terminology. This is also an action item. This docket eliminates references to regional accreditation and regional accreditor in alignment with changes to federal law and national and state practices. The board will be carrying this docket to the legislature. Are there any questions?
Do not see any.
Great. I would move to approve the proposed rule docket number 08-0202-2603 pertaining to accreditation terminology.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Great, thank you. Our next to the last, but not quite last, rule is item 11. It's temporary proposed rule 08-0601-2601, resolution of athletics participation disputes, and is an action item. This is a temporary proposed docket to add a new section of rule that will address the process to be used to resolve athletic participation disputes. This rulemaking became necessary due to the recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling upholding Idaho's Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which passed in 2020 but has been in the courts since. The board will carry this to the legislature. I would say again, as it did in committee, this doesn't address the issue or the policy. It addresses a process for disputes. And I would turn the time over to Jennifer White, our executive director, to add any comments.
Thank you, Chair Gilbert, Chair Keogh. Jennifer White, Executive Director for the State Board of Education. As Board Member Keogh mentioned, just over a month ago, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the Ninth Circuit and remanded the case based on ultimately eliminating a preliminary injunction that had been in place preventing this law from being enforced. So now the path for enforcement has been cleared, and this law requires the state board, it is a shall promulgate, rules regarding the receipt and timely resolution of disputes related to the participation of students in athletics and disputes related to biological sex. The board's role here is very limited. So given that very narrow framing of the responsibility of the board, our office has been working in partnership with stakeholders to focus on the dispute process itself. So this includes the designation of an administrator who will receive notifications of dispute. It provides the process for notifications relevant to resolving the dispute. It provides a process and protections related to the documentation received related to the dispute, ensuring confidentiality of all of the parties involved, and then ultimately provides for resolution. It does not address ultimately eligibility, which will be a decision that will be made at the institutional level based on the resolution that is provided through the dispute process. We certainly expect feedback about the lived implementation of this from our schools and our institutions, and we'll be working in partnership with our legislative members to ensure that we are appropriately addressing what should be addressed in the rule to the extent necessary. Within that limited scope, we wanted to be very thoughtful about the burden on students and administrators and have taken a great deal of time and care to ensure, again, that we're approaching this as narrowly as possible. But the timelines are tight, and that is part of the intent, again, is to ensure the protection of those who are affected by this law, and to ensure that disputes don't languish any longer than absolutely necessary. With that, we do seek your approval of this rule and look forward to continued engagement as we start to live in it.
Thank you, Director White. Are there any questions from board members? This policy is pretty straightforward, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it with a partnership with legal counsel and impacted stakeholders. So,
questions? No, I don't see any. Sean.
If there's not, then I would move to approve the temporary proposed rule docket number 08-0601-2601 pertaining to resolution of athletic participation disputes.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. Board members, the last rule docket, I believe, in front of us today is number 08-0111-2601, proprietary and post-secondary accreditation, and is an action item. This docket updates, simplifies, and clarifies language related to proprietary and post-secondary accreditation, and includes the elimination of references to regional accreditation and regional accreditor. The board will carry this docket to the legislature. Pretty simple docket. Allison, do you have anything to add?
I do not. It is a very simple docket.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members?
Nope.
Seeing none, then I would move to approve the proposed rule docket 08-0111-2601 pertaining to accreditation terminology associated with post-secondary institutions and proprietary schools.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Callie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you, Chair Gilbert. So the last item on the PPGA agenda is a big one, and it's we have allotted 25 minutes for it, it looks like, but it's strategic plans of the board, the agencies, and the institutions under the board's governance. Each year, these agencies under the board's governance and institutions of higher education are required to submit updated strategic plans to the Department of Financial Management. And these plans are presented to the board for consideration and approval before their submission by the August 31st deadline. I hand it off to our staff, Amy Brumfield, to lead us through this. I know it's the last thing on your agenda this afternoon, and it can be kind of overwhelming, but appreciate everybody's attention. Amy?
For the record, am I close enough?
Pull it a little closer.
A little more. For the record?
There you go.
For the record, I'm Amy Brumfield. I'm the System Initiatives Director. And it is my pleasure to be here as the last item on this agenda. And it is nice that it is something so forward-looking. In the first item in the packet is a chart by Dr. Heidi Estrom that's kind of showing you a greater tie between all the reporting that we do and the reporting that you see, so that you can see the greater puzzle that we're working with, and you can see that all of the pieces are starting to work together. And this one is one of the most forward-looking reports that we have. It is a strategic plan, but that has a lot of different components. And like Chair Keough said, I thought I'd give a little bit of frame to why we do this report. So as money is appropriated to all of the different agencies that this board has oversight over, they are then required to do a strategic plan that explains to the legislature and to the taxpayers that they will do all of the right things that Idaho needs with this money. they are required to set a benchmark for each of those goals that is measurable, timely, smart in all the ways, so that we can look forward at 2027 and have a good guess as to where we will accomplish by then. By 2031, we'll know what they will accomplish by then. And then we have a little over a year before we turn in our performance measure report, where we come back and attest to the legislator and the taxpayers to say, we did all the good work that we said we would do. You gave us this trust, and we proved that over and over. So that is the goal of this report, and you have a very large collection of them, which is why we're not looking at them in depth, because I want to show you the process that it got to before here, to know who has been looking at this work too. So before it got to you, the OSBI went through it to make sure it meets all the statutory requirements, went back to fix those. Then our contact at the governor's office went through it to see, are we meeting their requirements and any needs they have. The Department of Financial Management also gave reviews and gave notes to every plan so that they could make those changes. And then in the PPGA meeting, we had a lengthy discussion with IDE, with CTE, and all of the institutions of higher education, going through each plan, going through the measures, and having opportunities to ask questions of each of those. And then the rest of the agencies that are under your control also do a strategic plan, but they present it with their annual report each year. So everyone at the board level has an opportunity to have representation, see the good work that is being done in your name. So going forward, we're not going to make you go through all of them, in case you're a little worried. That's not what the 25 minutes is for. We wanted to talk to you about what we plan to do going forward to make these more compelling, more comprehensive, and more useful to the board, to the taxpayers, and to the legislature as we look at this set of reports. So first, I draw your attention to the screen. The OSBI report itself is not really changing much from the last year. Even timing-wise, there just wasn't a lot of opportunity. But as we look forward, when I looked at it, there were only 2 institutions that were represented in the goals and the data, which you have a much broader scope, and we wanted to represent it. So the only real big change to this year's plan is that we scoped out how many different agencies are under your control and how many things you have oversight over, so that we could start to make that more apparent. As we look at this next year, we want to continue to evolve this report to be more compelling and more comprehensive. So the OSBI's report itself shows more of what the board is doing and shows more of the goals of this board and the goals of this office, rather than the agencies so much themselves, because they're already establishing their strategies, goals, and benchmarks for themselves. This we look forward to as an opportunity, particularly at the retreat, to hear what the board would like us to focus on and what we want to continue to present year after year. We want to showcase the scope. To me, it's most impressive in this very fast 3 months of looking at the wild scope of responsibilities that you take on in this job. And I would like it if this report showed the work and showcased the amazing amount of things that are being done, and that we can then go point back to that going, these dollars which you are deploying in this particular agency, and then all the agencies behind us, are being strategically used for the public taxpayers' good. So that is the goal for the OSBI plan. The next is to do the same work for the institutions. This plan, the institutions' plans are presented as part of their budget materials. They're used in the work groups, they're used in the committees, they're used on anywhere that the legislature would like to use it. And we would like to make them also more compelling and give the opportunity for the institutions to show off the personality and unique value that they bring to the state. So we'll be working with them to make sure that they can do that. And then very lastly, as you can see on this screen, we are looking to see, can we bring you more analysis so that the discussions that we have with you about these things are more meaningful and that we have more opportunity for your guidance. So if you looked at this one, this is a compilation of the higher education institutions. And the board has asked that they report on 3 measures uniformly. So we report on enrollment, on retention, and on graduation. Every institution reports the same one, same way, same reporting method, so that you have a comprehensive and comparable set of growth. So you can look at it from that little orange line. You can see that we expect a nice growth, a little bump between here from 25 to 27. The 4 years are looking at a 1.5% growth. And then we think by 2031, they'll be up 5.6%. That's the goal. Community colleges, they're having a banner year, as you guys just heard from CEI. They're expecting more aggressive growth in 27. They're thinking 5.6%. And then by 2031, they're looking at almost 16% growth is their benchmark.
If I may, Chair Gilbert. Amy, and I just want to clarify that the data that we have here was from our institutions and validated with them, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, they put this all into their own plan. These are their own benchmarks set by their own teams.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then you can see, if you look below it, you can see that the enrollment is broken by institution to see their goals across it. And that, for the most part, you can see the goals. And in the discussion with the PPGA, they got to give context for why did they set the goal? Why do they think these numbers will move in this direction? And what are their teams doing to make sure that the institution is sustainable, that the students are getting a great education, that all of the things are being done. So as you look at this as essentially one of the proofs of concept, but we are going to continue to do things that provide the board with more insight and meaningful analysis along with the strategic plan. And we're also going to bump the timeline up a little bit so we have a little more time for the board to discuss it if they wished. But with that, I would say that the plan for us is to look strategically at our strategic planning process, going, can we use this to be more effective in the budgeting process? Can we give more stakeholder confidence? Can we continually challenge the world to see that we're amazing and that we're doing great work and that every document that we present is providing proof of that? And so with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions? Any other comments?
Just a comment.
David?
And I think you pointed out that we'll have some a board retreat and some additional strategy sessions, but I think some of the conversations we've been having is emphasizing quality over quantity. So enrollment growth may not be such a high priority. So those are some of the things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Indeed.
If I may, Chair Gilbert, too, I think in the process that we're going through here is to ensure that the board is getting more comprehensive access, more in-depth access, contextualized access to the information coming from our institutions. And we're thinking critically about the timing that this information is coming to the board as well, so we can be thoughtful in terms of its strategic use. I want to thank our higher education institutions of helping us in that regard and being so willing to participate in that process. And I hope that this will put us in a position where these reports, I think, in many cases can be perceived publicly as kind of performatory, and we really want to make sure that this is valuable to the board and that we are utilizing them strategically as they're intended to be. So I want to thank Amy as well. She's just hit the ground running on so many different projects since she's joined our team and has done such a great job collaborating with our team at large. But she really undertook this and spent a lot of time working with the institutions on it, helping them validate their data, helping correct errors, and I think where we're landing is a really positive improvement.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions from the board? As someone on the way out, I will say that this is something we've been looking for those of us that have been around for a while, like for years. This is actually by far the best. I don't know, you've been around longer than anybody, but but this is we didn't have this. No. And not even close. And sort of the other thing that's important is it's from the institutions, but it's apples to apples. And so that's going to make a significant difference for decision-making going forward, so well done. And I know you're in the early stages. I mean, I recognize this is early innings, but very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Gilbert, I would add my appreciation to everyone involved with this. As I reflect on the statute that spawned this particular piece of planning, I was involved with that when I was in the legislature, and the legislature at the time, it was 2005, was looking for improving state agency accountability, increasing the ability of the legislature to assess and oversee agency performance and assist lawmakers with policy and budget decisions, and to increase the ability of state agencies to improve agency management, service delivery, and effectiveness. And those are the goals that we strive for as well. And it's great to have Amy on board and to get to the point that we are today. It's been a long road, but I think it's beneficial conversations to have and to continue to move forward. So this particular set of plans needs to move forward to the Division of Financial Management. So I would move to approve the strategic plans of the board, institutions, and agencies as presented in attachments 2 and 4 through 17.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion's approved. Okay, and Sean, I believe that concludes your agenda?
It does, and thank you everyone for your time and perseverance through this agenda this afternoon.
Thank you.
And I apologize that I can't be with you tomorrow.
Well, thank you for doing it from a distance. This was a lot, and as always, you did it perfectly. So thank you, Sean. Okay, with that, we will adjourn for the day. I'll remind everybody that there's a reception immediately following the board meeting for everybody at Marshall Rotunda, the Stevens Performing Arts Center. So I think we'll all head over there, right? Correct, President?
Yeah, it's scheduled to start at 6, so if people need to take a little bit of a break and get done at 6.
That wouldn't be a horrible idea. Great.
Chair didn't let us have any breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Got to run through.
Directions on how to get there, just see an ISU person, but we would invite you all to.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Wagner. All right, with that, we will pick up tomorrow at 8 a.m.? Yes. At 8 a.m. Okay, thank you.